I started whispering during my lunch break because I realized my voice was too loud on a phone call. I was confused and frustrated because I hadn't asked to cancel anything. The woman from the insurance company on the phone stayed calm while I was upset. She said, "According to our records, we received a request from you to cancel your policy, and it's done." I had a savings-oriented life insurance policy. My sister-in-law Rachel, who is an insurance agent, convinced me to get this policy, which was more expensive than others. My name is Stella. I'm 40 years old and work in an office. I live in an apartment with my husband and daughter. Today has been really hard from the start. When my husband woke up, he said he was going on an overnight business trip and started packing his bags. At the same time, our daughter Amy was upset because she couldn't find her math textbook. Amy is in first grade, so she often needs help, but it's stressful when my husband starts complaining about his missing travel bag and new socks. I've been thinking about divorce for a while because our relationship has been struggling for the past year, and this situation just makes things worse. I said out loud, "Why don't you both prepare the day before?" Amy quickly apologized and promised to be more careful next time. I replied, "That's okay, honey, I should have helped you check yesterday. I'm sorry, but my husband reacted differently. He said, if you took care of everything, Amy wouldn't be in this mess, and if you had bought me new socks, I wouldn't be complaining." I was angry about his small complaints. I had no idea he was going on a business trip. I said, "There are clean socks in the drawer, isn't that good enough?" He replied, "I like to wear brand new socks when I go on a trip." I thought his preference was strange, but I kept that to myself. He goes on these overnight trips every few months, and I figured his company scheduled it, but he didn't bother to tell me. If my husband needed new socks, he could have bought them himself or at least told me beforehand. Amy looked like she was about to cry and said, "Mom, Dad, please stop arguing." So, I turned to her and said, "I'm sorry, Amy, it's okay, let's find your textbook together." My husband went back to packing quietly while I helped Amy with her backpack. I sneaked a look at him and saw that he was packing casual clothes instead of his usual business outfit. I wondered, is he cheating again? Something felt wrong. He had cheated on me twice before. The first time was right before Amy was born. I thought about divorce then, but he begged me to forgive him, even getting our in-laws involved. My mother-in-law pleaded with me to stay with him, and my sister-in-law Rachel asked me not to leave her brother, so I decided not to go through with the divorce. But then, last year, he cheated on me again with a girl he met on a dating app. My husband tends to say whatever comes to his mind, and he's not good at hiding things. He thinks he's being sneaky, but I always find out. In a flash, he was caught again, crying and begging for forgiveness, even though he usually acts so confident. Seeing him cry, with his nose running, was just sad. I told him, if there's another issue, we're done. I made him fill out divorce papers, moved all our savings into my account, and even though I forgave him, I no longer loved him. He always puts himself first, and I can't forgive him for not caring for our daughter, Amy, or spending time with her, but I plan to wait until Amy is a bit older before getting a divorce. In the end, we found Amy's math textbook easily in her backpack. Amy left for school happy, but I felt completely drained from the morning. I didn't have time to make my packed lunch, so I went to a deli near my office. While I was there, a poster from an insurance company caught my eye, and I suddenly remembered that my policy was one where I would receive a cash back after some time. I thought it should be deposited soon. I'm paying a lot for my insurance every month. Without little joys, I wouldn't be able to keep going. I started to feel excited thinking about what I could do with the cash back when it finally arrives. Maybe I could buy Amy some new fall clothes. With a spring in my step, I stopped by the bank to update my passbook. To my surprise, not only was there no celebration money, but this month's insurance premium hadn't been deducted yet. I thought, isn't the premium supposed to be deducted the same month I get the bonus? At first, I was confused, but remembering my husband's strange behavior this morning made me uneasy, so I decided to call the insurance company. Unfortunately, my sister-in-law Rachel was off for the day, and another woman answered the phone. She told me that my policy had been cancelled and the cancellation fee was already paid, but I hadn't seen any money deposited in my account. The woman kept insisting that all the paperwork was in order and that the insurance company had done everything correctly. I thought, what if my policy was cancelled without my consent? It felt like she was suggesting the insurance company wasn't at fault. I made it clear that I had no intention of canceling my policy. I told her I would check with Rachel and my husband, but she'd better confirm with Rachel too. Then I hung up. Before I knew it, my lunch break was almost over. I didn't even have time to eat the lunch I had bought from the deli, but I had lost my appetite anyway. I asked my boss if I could leave early, then I finished my work quickly. I left the office earlier than usual and immediately called my husband's cell phone. If he was really busy at work and couldn't answer, then that was just how it would be. "Stella, why are you calling me? I'm at work," he said after a few rings. He sounded annoyed, but I could hear cheerful music in the background. I thought, does he really think he won't get caught? This is ridiculous. "Sorry about that, but my life insurance was cancelled without my consent, and there's no cash value. Do you know anything about this? I think I might have been scammed, and I'm considering going to the police." "The police? What the hell are you thinking?" It was me. I suspected that my husband and Rachel were behind the cancellation, so I exaggerated my claims. My husband sounded shocked and immediately confessed. I felt relieved at first, but my anger quickly grew. "Oh really? It was you? Where's the cash value?" I demanded. "I used it to support my mom," he said. I was confused. Did something happen to my mother-in-law? Does she need money? "No, she just said she wanted to take a family trip to a holiday resort," he replied. I was surprised by his response. "You canceled my life insurance without my consent for a trip? You used my money for travel expenses? The business trip was a lie?" "Yeah, I'm the beneficiary, so I don't see a problem. We're staying in a luxury hotel. I'm in the lobby right now, and there's an amazing chandelier," he bragged, sounding excited. "What the heck? I have a lot of complaints. Why did you cancel without my consent? I'm the one paying the premium. You should be able to afford your own travel expenses." "Oh, shut up. If something happens to you, I'm the one who gets the money. It's my money. You're healthy and not going to die anytime soon. You can just take out another policy." I couldn't understand his arguments at all. The conditions change as you get older, and insurance premiums go up. Do you really not understand that? "Well, I'm not the one paying," he replied. I felt a headache coming on from his irresponsible words. "Do your parents and Rachel know you canceled my life insurance without my consent? Didn't my father-in-law say anything? Rachel is obviously an accomplice. Did you forge my signature?" "Yeah, my mom and dad were happy about it and said it was a good idea. After all, you're the one holding all our money, so it's your fault. I want to take a break and have some fun once in a while. It's okay, right? We came on a family trip, and everyone's happy." "Your family includes your parents and Rachel, right? Why aren't Amy and I included? Isn't your family Amy and me? Insurance is for emergencies, and I'd rather not use it. Shouldn't you consult me first if you want to support travel expenses?" "Because you would definitely say no. You and Amy are always together, so it's fine to be with family for a change. Plus, Rachel said she wanted to take out a new life insurance policy for you, so I thought it was killing two birds with one stone." "That's just for you guys. Unbelievable. You won't admit something because it seems bad. What an excuse. Aren't you embarrassed to act like grade schoolers? You're making me not want to talk by getting so angry. What a pain. If you keep this up, I wouldn't mind getting a divorce." I bet you couldn't pull it off. Maybe being in a tourist spot made him more confident. My husband sounded bolder than usual. "I understand," I said, and hung up the phone. "Brace yourself. I'll get back at my in-laws and my husband for all this," I murmured to myself. My patience was running out. My husband had been underestimating me because I always forgave him, even though he kept threatening divorce. I had thought my in-laws were normal people and that Rachel wasn't bad, despite pushing for a high life insurance policy. But normal, sensible people wouldn't cancel their daughter-in-law's life insurance without asking and misuse the money. This is what I get for marrying into this family. I'll cut them all off, I thought as I immediately headed to the court. I always kept the divorce papers my husband had filled out in my bag, like a good luck charm. I submitted the papers right away and then picked up my daughter, Amy, from her after-school program. On our way home, I told her about the divorce. Amy was surprised, but after I explained it carefully, she accepted it. When we got home, she asked, "So Dad isn't coming back home anymore?" I replied, "Your dad won't be back tonight because he's on a business trip. We're getting divorced, so we'll be living separately, but we still need to prepare for that." Then Amy said, "Let's start packing right away. Hurry." I was confused. Huh? What's going on? "Well, you're breaking up with Dad, right? You don't have to cry anymore. I don't like him because he's always mad." "Wait, Amy, did you try to stop us from fighting because you didn't want me to be sad?" I had planned not to divorce for Amy's sake, but it seemed she had been dealing with everything on her own. She said, "Dad never plays with me, even on his days off. He tells me to go away whenever I talk to him. He only uses me to say mean things to you. Like this morning. I've always been sad because I love you, Mom." Amy smiled slightly, and her smile pierced my heart. My husband, who was selfish and always put himself first, had been seen through by both me and Amy. It broke my heart to hear Amy's true feelings, and I felt like crying. "I see. I'm sorry, Amy. I've made you go through a lot. From now on, it'll be just the two of us, but I'll take good care of you. I really love you." Yay! I vowed never to let Amy be sad again. While she did her homework, I kept myself busy by reaching out to a lawyer and searching for realtors and movers online. Then I contacted my parents. When I explained the situation, they told me to come back home right away. Amy doesn't have to transfer schools. If it's tomorrow morning, I can borrow a truck from an acquaintance to help us move our things, my father said. I contacted the landlord and the elementary school to explain that we'd be commuting from my parents' house. I decided to deal with the school paperwork gradually and called work to take a vacation day tomorrow. I wanted to get most things done before my husband got home. The next day, my parents came over, and we quickly moved our stuff to their house. Everything was done before my husband got home, and only his belongings were left in the apartment. I left a note that said we were divorced and that we were now strangers. Then I left the apartment. When my husband came home and realized we were gone, he would undoubtedly be stunned. Serves him right. The thought of it made me feel triumphant. I was able to prepare for the divorce so smoothly this time because I had researched the necessary steps after he cheated on me before. I had warned him then that next time there would be no discussion. We would divorce, and we had agreed I would keep custody and all our shared assets. In this way, my daughter and I started our new life at my parents' house. A few days later, I received a frantic call from my mother-in-law. My husband's phone was blocked, so I assumed she was calling on his behalf. He is a weak man who cries easily despite his arrogance, so he might be crying pitifully, I thought. "What are you thinking? You're divorcing him even though my son didn't cheat," she yelled loudly, making my ears ring. I instinctively moved my phone away from my ear. "Hey, Stella, it's not too late. Apologize to my son right now. He's been crying because he's hurt. Aren't you embarrassed making such a fuss over this?" "Huh? Apologize? Why?" I couldn't comprehend her words and blurted out, "Who are you?" She probably didn't expect such a response from me, and she stopped speaking abruptly. I was surprised by my own words that just slipped out. "Hey, it's me, your mother-in-law. Come on, Stella, what's gotten into you? You can't possibly be going senile. You're still young." "No, I only have one mother. If you don't identify yourself, could this be a scam call?" I decided to go along with my slip of the tongue. After all, we were strangers now that we were divorced, and there was no point in having a serious conversation with people who canceled my life insurance policy without my consent. "Don't be ridiculous, Stella. If you're going to take that attitude, I have a few things to say too." As expected, my mother-in-law was furious, but I didn't care. "What are you talking about? Do you think you can do something?" I had an agreement with him that if there was any issue, we would divorce immediately. He told me on the phone that we were getting divorced. Her words left her speechless. I took the opportunity to press on. If he wanted to go on a trip, he should have just talked to me about it. Why did he have to commit a crime? Is your whole family looking to end up in jail or something? Canceling life insurance without consent qualifies as forgery. You know that could lead to imprisonment for 3 months to 5 years. I'm ready to fight this thoroughly. I don't want to hear about how your family has no savings or is poorer. My husband might have done this nonchalantly, but that's precisely why I can't forgive him. Hold on a minute. We can't have criminals in this family. Hey, sorry, listen to me, please. Surprised by the mention of imprisonment, my mother-in-law, who had been on a roll just a moment ago, suddenly became submissive, but it was too late. I hung up and blocked all calls from my husband's family. After that, my husband was so shocked by the divorce that he voluntarily left his job and became a shut-in. As for the life insurance issue, we used a system known as financial ADR, which resolves insurance-related disputes outside of court, and we successfully settled the matter. Rachel, my sister-in-law, was disciplined and fired from her insurance company, and it even made minor headlines because of it. My in-laws became the talk of the town and were shamed by relatives, being told things like "you have no common sense" and "have some shame." It seems they were quite uncomfortable Both my husband and Rachel became unable to work and were in a financial crunch. Meanwhile, I was living freely with my daughter, Amy, back at my parents' house. I wanted to make up for the hardships I had put Amy through by showering her with plenty of love.
Take care of the kids for me. What do you mean, take care of them? Yosef said it so casually, but would I have accepted it if nothing had happened? I'm still not sure. Yosef was supposed to be on a business trip, but apparently, he got into an accident at his destination. I received a call and went to St. Helena, known for a resort. The sudden increase in business trips, happening several times a month, was suspicious. And an employee of a copier company getting into a traffic accident in a touristic place? Something was definitely up. While I was at the hospital thinking about all this, I ran into my sister, Emily. Why was Emily here? And why was she in this place with Yosef? Even in this clearly cornered situation, he thought he could still cover it up. It was infuriating. Did he think I would just let this slide? I have strong allies, so Yosef can't escape without consequences. He should face reality and reconsider his future actions. My name is Ivy. I'm a 33-year-old preschool teacher. After graduating from a community college in the state, I started working at a fairly large town's preschool. Being a preschool teacher is more challenging than I thought, but being around the always smiling children somehow cleanses my heart. However, since I'm always dealing with children at work, sometimes I crave conversations with adults. Even when I want to have age-appropriate conversations with adults, I look around and see dozens of children. There are a few fellow teachers, but in front of the children, we are always just teachers. Work is busy, and it's hard to find time to catch up with friends from college. I don't have time to make friends with shared hobbies either, so I'm always Mississippi Sanders when interacting with others. I interact and connect as a teacher, not as an adult in an adult conversation. At my workplace, the preschool, I am just a teacher and nothing more. One day, a senior colleague handed over the task of managing the copier at work. It was a job previously handled by a teacher going on maternity leave, and it fell to me, the one who seemed the most idle and timid. Honestly, managing the copier was just an additional burden. I wanted to leave work early and have fewer tasks, so to me, it was just a chore. Handling the copier management on top of my usual work was unbearable. Making sure the copier worked smoothly, refilling ink, managing the paper stock. These were the most troublesome tasks. But I never imagined that someone who would dispel my gloomy feelings would appear. In the early afternoon, the preschool bell rang, summoning the person in charge of the copier to the office. Since it was nap time for the children, I informed my partner teacher and headed to the office. "Excuse me, I'm here to check the copier." At that moment, I felt a reaction as if an electric current had run through me. I didn't know why, maybe his looks? His voice? There was something indescribable. "Oh, yes. I'm in charge. I took over from the previous person. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. I'm from the copier company." My first impression of Yosef was strange. It wasn't the kind of feeling one usually has for a business contact. It was oddly familiar. "Oh, the girl from the morning. But you wouldn't know me. Do you sometimes stop by the convenience store near the bus terminal in the morning?" I remembered with that one sentence. "Oh, the one by the new snack section at the convenience store." Sometimes, I stop by the convenience store near the bus terminal to buy lunch or drinks. Depending on the day, I purchase different items, but when I go at a set time, there's always someone there. Just after entering the store, near the prominently displayed shelf of new products, stands a man intently choosing what to buy. That was him. You know, I used to see you at the convenience store. I never imagined we'd meet like this. That's my line. I was curious about the new snacks, but I was also curious about the young lady I sometimes saw. Could such a thing really happen? Usually, I deal with children at work and have no opportunities to meet men, but I remember feeling a flutter in my heart at that moment. I don't think it's appropriate to talk about work here. How about exchanging contact information? If you don't mind, that is. Of course, I don't mind. I'd be happy to. On the day I was meeting with the copier company representative, we ended up exchanging contact information out of the blue. That became the catalyst for us to gradually get closer. As we talked about daily happenings and amusing incidents, he became someone I was increasingly interested in. At first, it was love at first sight for me. But as I got to know Ivy, I realized that being with her made me feel so at ease. Please marry me. I can't believe this day would come. I'm so happy. I thought I would spend my life dedicated to my work, growing older, but happiness suddenly came to me. Meeting again with someone I had passed by casually in the city, deepening our connection, and moving towards marriage. At that moment, I was at the peak of happiness, but at the same time, I had another thought in my mind. I won't end up like my sister, Emily. I will seize my own happiness. That's what I whispered to myself. My sister, Emily, is 2 years older than me. People think we must be close because we're not far apart in age, but that's a complete misunderstanding. I am the quiet type, if I do say so myself. I'm average in studies and fashion, and I decided to become a childcare worker simply because I love being around children. On the other hand, Emily is my exact opposite and spares no effort in being fashionable. She's always thinking about how to stay beautiful and how to dress up. In terms of social hierarchy, she was at the top, always wearing the latest trends, belonging to a group that others admired. Perhaps because of her social circles, she was always in relationships with men since her school days. Since she got her first boyfriend in the first year of middle school, Emily never had a period without a boyfriend. Right after graduating high school, she moved out to live with her then boyfriend. Eventually, she settled down at 25 because she had a daughter, but soon got divorced. We're connected on social media, so I occasionally check if she's doing well. She continues to post photos of herself all dressed up, but they leave me feeling a sense of emptiness. More than being a mother, she can't stand not being number one. Just like in her childhood, her surface is decorated like a facade. It's not about showing others how happy I am. I believed that weaving a life filled with true happiness with Yosef was what mattered. Right after getting married, I was happy. I loved coming home to the person I adored, eating dinner together, and spending peaceful evenings. Sharing what happened that day and laughing together felt irreplaceable. However, at some point, Yosef's words started to bother me. It was because Yosef began commenting on my appearance and behavior. He seemed like the type who wanted to control people according to his own wishes, constantly meddling in things. At first, I tried not to let it bother me, but there are things one simply cannot endure. Hey, Ivy, don't you ever wear makeup? Oh, this? As a daycare worker, it tends to come off while taking care of the kids or playing with them, so I don't wear much. But showing up to work like that isn't right, is it? Is it really that strange? I've always dressed like this. That day, I was wearing a hoodie and jeans. Since I commute by bike to the daycare, I prioritize ease of movement and change into my work clothes before starting my shift, so there's no real problem. I've always commuted in this style. Most working women in their 30s don't go out in such casual clothes. It's like you're in loungewear. Really? I've always dressed like this, but why are you bringing it up now? He often complains about my clothes and belongings. Starting with my bag and outfit, he also criticizes my hairstyle and makeup, saying they're not feminine or appropriate for a working adult. Once, when we went out for lunch and stopped by a bookstore downtown, he picked up a women's magazine and said, "Hey, why don't you ever dress like this, Ivy?" It was a magazine targeting office ladies, with glamorous headlines and decorations on the cover. Winning dresses to catch his eye this summer, perfect $300 outfit for a summertime date, honestly, things far removed from my interests. Sorry, but I'm not really into this kind of thing. I don't wear such outfits for work, and they don't suit me. Oh, I see. So you have no intention of dressing to please me. With that, he became sulky. It's been 6 months since we got married, and just when he started saying strange things, he would suddenly get moody. I didn't understand what he wanted or was thinking. Since that day, our relationship has been somewhat strained. We only talk when necessary, with no room for enjoyable chats or lighthearted jokes. It feels like there's a cold breeze blowing between us. We haven't had a major argument, nor do I remember saying anything that warranted an apology. At this point, I can't pinpoint what caused the rift in our relationship. If there was a past argument or issue, we could work to resolve it, but honestly, I have no idea. If I had to guess, it might be because I refused to wear the clothes he wanted me to. Is that it? But since we live together, sharing the same space and time, there are moments when we can casually talk if the mood aligns. Just as a TV program about infidelity came on, we were watching together. The usual commentators and hosts were debating the definition of cheating and where the line between acceptable and unacceptable lies. Of course, I think cheating is absolutely unacceptable. I've even broken up with a past boyfriend because of his infidelity. Given that I don't tolerate cheating even in a dating relationship, I believe it's even less acceptable in a marriage to secretly engage with someone of the opposite sex. Casually, I brought up the topic with him. "Hey, this TV show is talking about cheating." "Yeah, well, everyone's got their own take on what love is." "Love takes different forms, that's true." Then Yosef started talking like a machine gun, as if trying to convince me. "I mean, seriously? A marriage certificate, just one piece of paper, and you're not allowed to love anyone else ever again? Isn't that weird? I'm just saying, what's wrong with some freedom in love?" Frankly, Yosef's words didn't sound like those of a married person. It felt like there was something hidden behind them. He might have had a reason for saying something so out of character. After all, is Yosef the type of person who wants to continue pursuing romantic interests even after getting married? And love isn't determined by the institution of marriage, but by the depth of your feelings, right? No matter how married you are, if you don't truly love the person, it's kind of pointless, isn't it? Hearing him say something like that made me wonder what marriage meant to him, and more than anything, it cast a shadow over my heart. It felt as if those words were directed at me, and I couldn't bring myself to look Yosef in the eyes. How could I have fallen for someone who could say something so unbelievable without changing his expression? Maybe I wasn't thinking straight back then. No matter how many days passed, his words kept bothering me. He's not the kind of person who would joke about something like that, and that's what made it even more perplexing. I felt a strange mix of confusion and a desire to know the truth. Was there a way to find out more? I flipped through a few pages of my work files while pondering. Yes, maybe I could ask that person. One day, Yosef came home without looking at me and said this right away. "Oh, I'm going on a business trip starting tomorrow." "What? Another trip? You were gone for about 3 days last week too, right?" Ignoring my surprise, he remained indifferent. It can't be helped. Someone suddenly quit at this time of year, and we're short-staffed. Since I'm a reliable expert, I have to keep the workplace running. Because he said it so suddenly, I couldn't help but ask. Hey, do I know the person who quit? Was it that colleague you mentioned before? Yosef used to tell me about things that happened at work and funny stories, so I knew some of the people he talked about frequently. I asked casually, but Yosef's expression hardened. What? Does it matter? Does it have anything to do with you, Ivy? No, it doesn't. It's just a casual conversation. Then Yosef, clearly annoyed, cut the conversation short and went to the bathroom. Recently, it feels like his business trips have been increasing. It's been 3 years since we got married, and there haven't been any notable changes like department transfers or promotions. He hasn't mentioned anything like that, not even once. But suddenly, his business trips became more frequent. Once a month turned into twice, then 3 times. Now, there are weeks when he's away twice, sometimes he's gone for the entire week. The next day, before going to work, Yosef said something to me. This trip is for an important client, so don't even think about contacting me. What, really? Telling me not to contact him no matter what seemed really serious. Got it? If my phone rings and I get distracted during a crucial meeting, it'll be your fault. Do you think you can handle being responsible if we lose a $10 million contract? He left, and I watched his back as he headed to work. I got ready to go to my own workplace. As usual, I put on a hoodie and jeans and rode my beloved bike. After working at my job and finishing my tasks, I took a break. There was a TV on in the break room, showing a report about a traffic accident. I was chatting with a coworker about the dangers of traffic accidents when my phone rang. I usually don't carry my phone with me at work, but I had it with me in the break room, so I noticed the call right away. The phone call was from an unknown number, and I answered it curiously, only to find it was from the police. They were informing me that Yosef had been in a car accident. He had seemed fine just a few days ago, and now he was in an accident. I couldn't believe it, but I pulled myself together to listen to what they had to say. Unfortunately, he had been seriously injured in the accident and was being taken to the hospital. They told me he hadn't regained consciousness yet and that I needed to come immediately. I quickly asked for the location of the accident and the name of the hospital where he was taken. But as I asked for the name, a question arose in my mind. The police station was in St. Helena, a well-known resort area. Does he go on business trips to such places too? That thought crossed my mind briefly. But anyway, I needed to get to him as soon as possible. We can talk about everything else later. I talked to my boss, left work early, and took some time off to rush to Yosef's side. However, before heading to Yosef, there was something I had to do first. I made a call to a certain place. Soon, they told me they would send the documents to my home. When I arrived at the hospital, he was lying in bed. It took him 5 days after the accident to finally regain consciousness. The doctor told me that he had collided head-on with a truck, suffering significant injuries, and as a result, he was paralyzed on one side of his body. No way. Yosef, it can't be true. Sorry, but please take care of the 2 of us. I couldn't help but wonder. Take care of the 2 of you? What on earth was he talking about? It didn't seem like a joke given the situation, so I asked. Sorry, who do you mean by the 2 of you? Yosef had a momentary look of realization, as if he had slipped up. Who? Well, it's obvious, me and Riley. Riley was Emily's daughter, my niece. I had only met her a few times at family gatherings, but why was she suddenly being mentioned here? Why Riley's name all of a sudden? Well, she contacted me during my business trip and said that if anything happened to me, to take care of her. Riley contacted Yosef specifically? And the first thing that came to my mind was, why not ask Emily? I blurted out without thinking. Did Yosef and Riley exchange contact information? Not Riley, more like Emily, kind of. Yosef and Emily had exchanged contact information? And now he was asking me to take care of them? And most importantly, Yosef's hesitant tone was really bothering me. With so many questions, I didn't know where to start when a nurse came in, wheeling a mobile bed. This is the other passenger involved in the same accident, she said, bringing the bed over. The moment I saw who was on the bed, I screamed. Because the woman on that bed was unmistakably Emily. And she had a big belly. Emily? Why are you here? And that belly, is it possible? The nurse had said she was the other passenger in the accident. And those two people Yosef mentioned, could it be? So, the car accident happened, and there's nothing we can do, so please take care of me and Emily. Wow! You get it quickly! It's great to have a smart woman in situations like this. I felt the blood drain from my head. This was too perfect to be a coincidence. It couldn't be just a coincidence. I was scared to ask, but I couldn't help it. So, Yosef, are you telling me that you went on a resort with Emily under the guise of a business trip, and then had a car accident during that trip? Well, the business trip was real, it's not a lie or anything. I just happened to see Emily and decided to give her a ride. His stuttering and desperate excuses are pathetic. I can somehow tell that my voice is trembling. I can't fully grasp the situation I'm in right now. Oh, so you just happened to run into Emily on a business trip, and then conveniently decided to enjoy a trip together? Really? I couldn't help but continue speaking rapidly to Yosef. My feelings were a chaotic mix of not wanting to hear any more and knowing I couldn't ignore this. Whether he realized how I felt or not, Yosef responded in a carefree tone. He still didn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation. He was probably thinking about how to cover it up. His eyes were darting around frantically. No, you're overinterpreting. You always jump to the worst conclusions. It's one of your bad habits. I saw this as my chance and confronted him with the truth. Yosef, this was a fake business trip, wasn't it? Just a cover for a romantic getaway with Emily. I would never fake a business trip. I'm a well-respected and busy man. I don't have time for fake trips. He still thought he could talk his way out of this, believing that shouting would erase the truth. So, you didn't fake the business trip? Do you think yelling at me will make the CEO believe you? Yosef prioritizes his job and his reputation above all else. He works solely for the praise and recognition from his superiors. Just mentioning the CEO's name made him falter. When I said the CEO's name, he seemed momentarily scared. Huh? CEO? What does the CEO have to do with this? If you really didn't do anything wrong, you should be able to explain everything to the CEO. Well, if you can. Yosef sneered and responded. Ivy, you have no experience in corporate life. The CEO wouldn't get involved in a regular employee's business trip. It's embarrassing that you don't know that. Say whatever you want. By the way, I have a letter from the CEO for you. As soon as he saw the envelope with the company logo, he suddenly seemed excited. This finally means my achievements are recognized. All these years working from the bottom up, enduring as a regular employee for over 15 years, it was worth it. Oh, so you're getting a promotion? I couldn't help but ask, barely holding back laughter at Yosef's confident assumption. Of course. My peers have been getting promoted, and I've been waiting my turn for 10 long years. It's been tough, but hard work pays off. Give me the letter. He genuinely seemed to think it was a promotion letter. Here you go. Take your time and read it. I handed him the envelope, and he snatched it, slamming it down on the hospital table. He looked at it intently with a tense expression. He slowly tore open the envelope with the company logo. As he unfolded the paper, his previously excited demeanor froze. A dismissal notice. Termination for cause? Why me? The envelope was indeed from the CEO of the company Yosef worked for. Look, there are more documents in the envelope. Maybe you'll understand if you read them. Shut up! Damn it! He angrily turned the envelope upside down, shaking out all the contents. The documents fell haphazardly onto the table, with a few scattering onto the floor. It's about the issues with the submitted receipts and the business trip routes. Do you recognize these documents? No way! There's no way! In fact, I had contacted the CEO of Yosef's company right after the accident and had them check everything, including the company mobile phone's GPS and the expense receipts. The CEO himself had been suspicious of Yosef's actions. I am grateful to the CEO for taking proactive steps because it was a call from an employee's wife. Thanks to the CEO's own involvement, we were able to gather solid evidence in an instant that Yosef couldn't overturn by himself. No matter how much he struggled, it was undeniable that Yosef had made a fictitious business trip and misused company expenses. It seems like the CEO has been keeping a close eye on Yosef as well. As expected, the CEO has been thoroughly watching you. Shut up! Shut up! It's already over. Your usual tricks and lies won't work anymore. How much did you know? How much? I already knew you were going to be fired. In fact, right after I asked them to start the investigation, the CEO had informed me that they were planning to fire him. However, considering Yosef's long service at the company, they also said they would accept his voluntary resignation. Being fired for cause. Hey, what am I supposed to do now? Oh, but Ivy, you're a childcare worker, so it's fine for you, right? Fine for me? What do you mean? I asked Yosef, who had a self-satisfied expression on his face. Because you have qualifications, you can work anywhere, anytime. I do have a childcare qualification, but I'll be a stay-at-home dad and take care of Emily and Riley. Nowadays, you can ask for help from volunteers or helpers for childcare. And during that time, Ivy will work. Isn't that a great idea? I was disgusted by his terrible speech, delivered with flared nostrils. His unbelievably selfish statements made a mix of exasperation and anger well up inside me. Who would lend you a hand? You and the volunteers. I couldn't understand his belief that he could still rely on someone for help. Living while helping each other is essential, but it's clear that he only thought about getting help one-sidedly. It's not wrong to rely on someone, but living a life where you're constantly thinking about getting help from others is beyond me. I didn't go through the trouble of getting a childcare qualification to support a cheating, dishonest person. I'm not working to live with someone like that. I handed Yosef the business card of the lawyer I had already hired and told him, "We're getting a divorce. I'll be getting compensation from the divorce trial. For anything else, go through the lawyer." Huh? Demanding compensation from a paralyzed person, are you a devil? Do you know what you're doing? I sighed in exasperation and said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I should ask you the same question. If you think back on what you've done, maybe you'll understand. You married me because you loved me, right? The vows in sickness and in health, was that a lie? He grabbed the hem of my clothes with his functioning hand, but I forcefully shook it off. Then I finished telling Yosef everything and looked down at Emily in the bed next to him. Hey, Emily. You've always needed to be number one, haven't you? Even with me, your own sister. Emily's face momentarily showed a hint of fear, but she quickly returned to her usual expression. That's right. I can't stand that Quiet Ivy got married successfully. I was supposed to marry a rich man first. Marry a rich man? I asked without thinking. That's right. The guy I dated right after high school was into gambling and never worked. Then I dated Riley's dad, who had a low salary, and we lived in an apartment forever. I can't take it anymore. Emily cried, but her words were completely selfish. You're always thinking about what others can do for you. I'm a woman. My job is to be beautiful, to be a shining jewel by my husband's side. Well, Yosef may not be that good-looking, but he works for a well-known company, and I thought his salary might be good. She said this while glaring at me. It's because you didn't break up with him quickly that we had to hide and be together in secret, and that's why the accident happened. Emily glanced back and forth between Yosef and me. So, you're saying it's my fault? Isn't it? What else? You chose your partners yourself. And using someone's income as a reason to go after another woman's husband is just not right. I felt my head starting to ache from talking to these two any longer, so I decided to cut it short. Besides, staying in the hospital room too long would be a nuisance. I was amazed at how easily these lines came out, like something from a drama. The sheer absurdity of her words left me speechless for a moment. We'll discuss the rest through lawyers, Emily. For now, here's a lump sum for compensation. That's all I'll say. What? Compensation? For someone who's paralyzed? You sound just like Yosef. It's laughable. It's unfortunate that you're paralyzed, but you were on a cheating trip, weren't you? It's your own fault. Emily reacted strongly to my words. You brought this on yourself. I muttered under my breath that it wasn't my fault, watching her face gradually turn pale, wondering how far she would go to avoid responsibility. In the end, Yosef and I got divorced. I had hired a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases, and we managed to get a higher settlement than usual from Yosef and Emily. I heard that after quitting his job, Yosef has been drifting from place to place. Emily, having tried to take her sister's husband, was disowned by her family and has been wandering with no place to go. She had found temporary support at a facility for people with disabilities, but all she did was complain, saying things like, "This isn't the kind of work I should be doing and I can't stand these tedious tasks." Not only was she unproductive, but she was also a nuisance to other users, leading to her being banned from the facility. Without access to welfare services or job placements, she has been surviving on the bare minimum disability insurance. As for Emily's child, Riley, I contacted Riley's dad, who gladly took him in. During the divorce, there was a custody battle, but Emily's fixed idea that a child should be with their mom and the mediator's decision resulted in her getting custody. I was a bit worried about Riley, so I was relieved when he was taken in by his dad. I felt that Riley could never truly be happy staying with Emily, so this was a comfort. I continue to work at the daycare, living my usual life. Regarding the settlement, Yosef's share was paid by his family, while Emily took out a loan to pay her part. Even though I received more money than I had expected, the happy days when I knew nothing are gone forever. With that, I can only move forward. No matter how much I look back, I can't return to those days, so I must move on. Maybe quitting my job and traveling to a foreign country I've never been to might be a good idea. With all these thoughts running through my mind, I spend my days.
That's right. No matter how much you try to inconvenience us, there's no way you'll cause any damage with your own funds. We don't need poor people from the bottom of the social ladder.
I let out a sigh and proceed with the final confirmation.
I'm going to close your bank account, okay? Go ahead.
The condescending tone in their voice is unmistakable. I'm disgusted by the way they're clearly looking down on us with disdain. I think to myself that it's time to teach a little lesson to those who judge others based on their upbringing and background. With that thought in mind, I smile calmly. My name is Jennifer. I'm a 29-year-old company employee. Currently, I'm living a peaceful life with my mother while working. My father passed away from an illness when I was young. His chronic condition took a turn for the worse at a relatively young age. My father, who had his hands in various businesses, was always busy with work, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night. Despite that, he cherished his family, and I have vivid memories of him playing with me on his days off. My mother and I were initially shocked when he passed away. However, my mother made sure to spend quality time with me so that I wouldn't feel lonely. Fortunately, when my father's illness was discovered, he had made sure to set aside enough funds for us to live on, even involving his own father. Thanks to that, I was able to attend university, and both my paternal and maternal grandparents were incredibly supportive of us. Especially my paternal grandparents, who lived nearby, doted on me whenever my mother was at work or away. Even now, I visit both sets of grandparents during special occasions and spend time with them. It's thanks to the support of so many people that I am where I am today. To repay the kindness of those who helped me, I took the entrance exams for a national university and landed a job at a major corporation. Originally, I had considered working at the bank where my father was supposed to take over, but my grandfather Thomas told me, "Do what you love. The bank has already been entrusted to someone else, so don't worry about it." So, I've been pursuing my passion ever since. Perhaps it's because I grew up in a fulfilling home environment where I could fully immerse myself in my hobbies, but I had absolutely no interest in romance. However, I've reached the age where most of my peers are married, and many of my friends have already tied the knot and had children. With that in mind, I had a fateful encounter that made me more conscious of marriage. Little did I know at the time that this encounter would escalate into a major incident.
Hey, aren't you interested in love or romance? Huh?
It all started with a single comment from Karen, a friend from work. She and I have been close since we started working together as colleagues.
You know, I have an acquaintance who's having trouble finding a partner. He's got a pretty good educational background and is handsome too. Jennifer, you've got a great academic record yourself, so I thought maybe you two might hit it off. I've been thinking for a while now that it's such a waste for someone so impressive as you to be single. There are even a few guys at the office who'd love to date you.
Karen has a wide social circle and always shares stories about various people. She lives with her boyfriend, whom she met through a friend's introduction, and they seem blissfully happy together. She's quite concerned about the fact that I never talk about my love life. I had confided in her about marriage before, so I decided to take her up on the offer. A few days later, I found myself meeting James, the guy Karen had introduced me to. We agreed to meet at a cafe. As I waited nervously, a man approached me and asked,
"Are you Jennifer?"
"Yes, nice to meet you." "You must be James, right?"
"Yeah. Thanks for coming today."
James looked at me with a blank expression. His eyes scanned me from head to toe. It felt like he was appraising me, and it made me a bit uncomfortable. He promptly sat down across from me and started talking.
So, Jennifer, what do you do for work?
I work in sales at a company. I've always enjoyed interacting with people and putting my ideas to good use, so I chose a career in sales. It's a rewarding job, and I especially love the moment when a customer makes a purchase based on my recommendation and tells me with a smile that they're happy with it.
What's the name of your company?
I tell him the name, feeling a bit puzzled by his question. Upon hearing my response, James nods in acknowledgement and finally cracks a smile. Although, it's more of a self-satisfied expression than a genuine smile, and it didn't leave a good impression on me. The company I work for is a relatively large corporation. Our business performance is strong, and I believe our products are well trusted in the market. Since James had asked me a question, I decided to return the favor and ask him one as well. So, James, what kind of work do you do? James answered my question with a boastful tone.
I work at a bank and I'm a department manager there. Our bank is huge and the work is quite complex. It's not something just anyone can do. But my dad is the president of the bank and I'm the heir, so I'm on a different level than regular folks to begin with.
His words left me with an unsettling feeling in my chest. I had expected a normal response, but his oddly sharp way of speaking made me uncomfortable. The bank James worked for was indeed a major one. I actually knew about the bank for a certain reason, but I never imagined James held a managerial position there, so I was surprised.
That's impressive. Your bank is a big one, isn't it?
I deliberately complimented James. There was no need to be rude, and I didn't think we'd meet again in the future anyway, so I figured it was better than giving him a cold attitude. Perhaps pleased by the compliment, James showed a happy expression and continued boasting about himself. Honestly, listening to him talk was painful. He occasionally listened to what I had to say, but ultimately, he always steered the conversation back to himself. And he said some unbelievable things about the fact that I didn't have a boyfriend. You know, I'm quite popular with women. But the ones who approach me are always from the wrong family background or education level. I thought the problem might be his personality, but at this point, I was relieved, thinking I wouldn't have to meet him again after turning down my friend's offer. However, as time passed, James made a suggestion with a satisfied look on his face.
I'd love to meet your parents, Jennifer. But we just met today. That's exactly why. The greatness of one's parents is important, and if we're going to date in the future, it's necessary, don't you think?
No way, I have absolutely no intention of dating him. I screamed inside my head. However, as if completely ignoring my feelings, the conversation kept moving forward.
Is there a day that works for you and your parents?
I'll have to talk to my mother about it.
Oh, what about your father?
Taken aback by James's lack of reservation, I was overwhelmed by his forcefulness and continued the conversation.
Well, my father passed away when I was young.
Suddenly, James narrowed his eyes. As I waited for his response, he simply said, "I see," and fell silent with a pensive look on his face.
Then, let me know when you find a date that works. I'll adjust my schedule to fit yours. Thanks. Shall we get going?
Without waiting for my reply, James stood up from his seat. It felt like I was talking to someone from a foreign country with whom I couldn't communicate. Although I honestly didn't want to see him again, I couldn't refuse now that he had my contact information and brought up meeting our parents. I was also bothered by the contemptuous look in his eyes the moment I mentioned that my father had passed away. In the end, I was pressured into agreeing to introduce our families to each other at a later date. When I explained the situation to my mother, Emily, she gave a wry smile and said,
"Maybe he was just nervous because he hasn't had a good encounter until now?"
Even if he was nervous, the way he spoke was strange.
But his parents are coming too, right? If you feel it's not working out, you can just decline. I'll go with you, so don't worry.
Thanks, Mom. I'm sorry for getting you involved. As I apologized with a guilty conscience, my mother laughed cheerfully.
It's okay. It's not your fault. Besides, I'm curious about the bank he works for, so let's see how it goes.
And so, James and I made plans to meet up along with our families. At the time, I never imagined that James had set up this meeting to do what he did. On the promised day, we arrived at the place James had specified. Judging from the exterior, it was a high-class restaurant.
It's a big place.
Yeah, it is. When we entered, a table was ready for us, but we were told James hadn't arrived yet. As we were shown to our seats and waited, the James family showed up a little past the appointed time.
Sorry we're late. The traffic was heavy. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming today.
The James family took their seats without any hint of remorse for being late. It made my blood boil, but I didn't want to start a fight right off the bat, so I began the introductions. After exchanging greetings, some time passed, and James's mother, Donna, opened her mouth with an unpleasant smile.
By the way, is your father running late?
I glanced at James. However, he just snorted and said nothing. I had definitely told him before that my father had passed away. That's the only reason I reluctantly agreed to this meeting when he said he wanted our families to get together, yet Donna was acting as if she knew nothing about it. My mother immediately responded on my behalf.
My husband passed away from an illness when my daughter was young. So today, I, her mother, am here with her.
She answered with a gentle smile. In response, Donna let out an exaggerated gasp.
Oh my, so Jennifer grew up in a single-parent household.
Her words made my eyes widen. Even though we had mentioned that my father died from an illness, her tone was clearly malicious.
It must be tough living with just one parent. But she did graduate from a state university. That's not too bad. Still, she's from a single-parent family, right? Won't that make things complicated if they date?
My mother and I could only stare in disbelief at the conversation unfolding among the James family. How could they say such things with the person in question sitting right in front of them? They were mocking the fact that I had a single parent, as if it were something shameful. Moreover, these weren't the kind of comments you'd make to someone you just met. Feeling my blood boil, I retorted in a low voice.
My mother raised me with love and care even after my father passed away. I am where I am today thanks to her. And don't you think it's incredibly rude to say such things to someone you've just met?
Jennifer. However, upon hearing my words, Donna burst out laughing.
Rude? Isn't it more absurd for the son of a distinguished family to date a girl from a single-parent household? I'm not a big fan of pushy women, you know.
This was hopeless. They were completely unwilling to listen to reason. With that thought in mind, I simply stared at the three of them in exasperation.
I had high hopes when I heard you worked for a big company. But I guess someone like you, who's going to take over our bank in the future, is just out of your league after all.
The insults kept coming, one after another. I had no desire to listen to them anymore, but I knew I didn't deserve to be spoken to like this. As I clenched my fists in anger, my mother glared at the three of them.
Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? Jennifer told me about what happened the other day. Are you enjoying mocking us now that you know she's from a single-parent family?
I had never heard her voice sound so icy before.
Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. We were just teasing a little, that's all. I don't think anyone enjoys being made fun of. And everything you've said so far has been nothing but snide remarks. We have no intention of sitting here and continuing to be insulted."
As my mother stated this clearly, the James family looked dissatisfied. The nerve of a mere commoner.
"A commoner, huh? You may be right, but today's events have helped me make up my mind."
For a moment, the James family looked puzzled by my mother's words, but then they quickly started laughing. Their expressions seemed to say, "What could someone like you possibly do?" My mother sighed and opened her mouth to speak.
"Actually, we have some assets deposited at your bank. However, I don't feel comfortable entrusting them to a bank with people like you."
"Oh, is that so? But I've never heard your name before, so you must not be a big client. I bet it's not even that much anyway."
"That's right. Even if you try to cause trouble for us, there's no way we'd suffer any losses from your measly funds. We don't need poor people from the bottom of the barrel."
My mother had given them one last chance, but they squandered it. I couldn't believe it. However, they were incapable of realizing that and continued to disparage us. I also sighed and proceeded with the final confirmation.
"I'll be closing our bank account. Be my guest."
Their tone was mocking. The James family stared at us with clear contempt. I thought to myself that it was time to punish those who judge others based on their upbringing. With that in mind, I smiled.
"Very well then. We'll go ahead and do just that. And please consider this marriage proposal null and void."
Of course, that was always the plan. The idea of my son marrying a girl from a single-parent family is just ridiculous.
"I understand. If you'll excuse us then."
My mother and I stood up. "Don't worry about today's bill. I'm sure it's too expensive for you to afford anyway."
"Is that so? Well then."
And with that, our disastrous meal came to an end. Afterwards, we made a phone call to a certain place. A few weeks later, my cell phone was flooded with messages from James. Of course, I had expected this, and since it was a mess of their own making, I had no intention of responding. I immediately blocked his number. A few days later, I received a call from my grandfather. Summoned by him, my mother and I headed to James's bank. When we were shown into the conference room, we found the James family there, their faces pale. The moment she saw us, Donna rushed over and apologized profusely. "We are truly sorry for what happened." I didn't respond to her words and simply smiled as I opened my mouth to speak.
"What exactly are you apologizing for?"
At my question, Donna bit her lip, her fists trembling. It was understandable. There were far too many things she needed to apologize for. She knew this, which was why she likely felt frustrated. The reason things had come to this point was because of what I had said that day about closing our bank account. Of course, our personal account didn't have a particularly large balance. Closing it wouldn't cause much damage. But it was different with my grandfather. He had been managing my father's inheritance for us at James's bank. And he also had his own account there. If we were to close all the accounts, including my grandfather's and my father's inheritance, the total amount would be around $700 million. In other words, the moment they mocked us, the decision to close the accounts was made. Moreover, my grandfather was the former chairman of this bank. My father was supposed to take over the bank, but he passed away at a young age, so the position was handed over to William.
"I didn't know. I had no idea you were related to the former chairman."
William pleaded in a frightened voice, as if making excuses. But that didn't matter. Even if he hadn't known, it didn't change the fact that he had been prejudiced against someone's family background. That was what had led to this situation, so it was his own fault.
Are you saying you would have treated me differently if you had known I was related to the chairman? Hey! Don't talk to my dad like that. It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandfather was the former chairman. I have no obligation to tell a stranger like you about that. And besides, weren't you the one who kept pushing the conversation forward on your own? Have you forgotten how much you mocked me?
Unable to retort to my words, James narrowed his eyes in frustration.
When you found out I was from a single-parent family, all three of you insulted me, remember? When I said I didn't feel comfortable keeping my money in a bank with people like you and wanted to close my account, you told me to go ahead. We simply did as you said. But to go this far over something so trivial? It may seem trivial to you, but have you ever considered how it feels to have your family insulted?
Silence fell over the room. Donna was trembling with a hopeless expression on her face, and William hung his head. But James still seemed unable to accept the situation. His entire face was filled with dissatisfaction.
And here I thought I was doing you a favor by even talking to you, but you just got carried away.
James showed no signs of remorse. The moment he let those words slip out, the door to the conference room opened. There stood my grandfather. Seeing my grandfather's stern expression, William and Donna turned even paler and froze in place. Only James glared at me.
Jennifer and her mother gave you a chance to reflect on your actions, yet in the end, you only think of yourselves. That's not true. This woman. Watch your mouth. If you say another word, you'll find yourself in an even more miserable position than you are now.
Silenced by my grandfather's words, James once again glared at me. Then, as if he had reached his breaking point, he shouted,
But who would have thought that someone from a single-parent family would be related to the former chairman? And yet, you came to the meeting knowing I was the future chairman just to mock me. James, be quiet.
My grandfather sternly reprimanded James, who was getting agitated. James seemed to falter a bit under his gaze.
The future chairman, huh?
My grandfather turned his attention to William. Under his stare, William shrank back even further.
I can understand wanting your son to take over. But now that I know he holds such views, it's impossible for me to let you continue as chairman. But, over something like this.
William tried to argue back, but lowered his hips again under my grandfather's piercing gaze.
Do you still not understand that thinking it's just something like this is the root of the problem? That being said, I am retired now. I'll leave the judgment to the board members. If you have anything to say it to them.
I have recorded both your statements from the other day and our conversation now. Don't forget that this voice recorder will serve as evidence. I took out the voice recorder in front of the three of them and pressed the play button. The conversation from the other day started playing from the recorder.
It's cowardly of you to have prepared something like that. I had it ready just in case. But don't forget that you're the ones who created a situation where I had no choice but to use it.
Even James couldn't find a way to retort, and as the three of them turned pale, my grandfather said,
Thank you. Leave the rest to me now.
With that, my mother and I left the room. In the end, my grandfather didn't end up transferring the funds. William was stripped of his position as chairman, and James was also demoted. Perhaps because his pride wouldn't allow it, James ended up resigning voluntarily. However, my grandfather used his influence in the financial industry, so I think it will be extremely difficult for James to find another job in the same field. I'm not sure if he realizes it or not, but William seems intent on somehow sticking it out until retirement age. But my grandfather said it would be tough on him both mentally and physically. Donna, who had acted so high and mighty as the chairman's wife, apparently started a part-time job to maintain her lifestyle, but given her personality, I heard she probably won't last long. I'm really sorry. It's okay. You didn't know, right? I only told the friend who had introduced me to James about the outcome of the whole ordeal. She had only heard about James from an acquaintance, so she had no ill intent. My mother was worried about the fact that we were a single-parent family because of that incident, but I'm happy now, and I can live my life thanks to the support of those around me. When I told her that, she laughed and said, "Thank you." After my grandfather had taken care of everything, he smiled and said, "Come visit us at home again soon." I'm truly grateful for my grandfather's help in getting through this situation.
It was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's all good.
By the way, I have some good news for you, Jennifer.
Huh? Is it about love again?
This time, it's my boyfriend's friend, so it'll definitely be fine. I'm not interested in romance for a while, but I'm satisfied with my life now. I want to continue living while cherishing the people who support me. And someday, I hope to meet someone who I'm compatible with.
You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper. So that was your plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave, I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk. Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that. All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again. Then consider yourself fired.
What?
As a result of my actions, my elite husband. My name is Helen. 30 years old. I own a restaurant. People say it's impressive to be an owner at this young age, but the place was originally my father's, and I just took over. The chef, who's been with us since my father's time, is the one who actually cooks in the kitchen, preserving the flavors that have been cherished since its establishment. With the help of such longtime staff, I've somehow managed to keep the restaurant running. I'm still in the learning process. I took over the restaurant at the age of 22, right after graduating from college. Instead of getting a job, I was immediately entrusted with it from my father. I graduated from the economics department, so I thought I had learned a lot, but reality doesn't always follow the textbooks. Despite numerous failures, and my fair share of bad days, I've managed to keep the restaurant going to this day. I thought I was pretty lucky. About 5 years after I took over the restaurant, a man started coming regularly. It was Brian, who would later become my husband. Once, a group of men in suits came over. Brian was one of them. He said that he liked the food, and started coming as a regular customer. Brian and his colleagues were employees of a major food manufacturer, and they said they were visiting various restaurants for research. I've had my eye on this restaurant for a while, but I usually go to the bigger ones in town, or in the suburbs, so I always pass this place by. Oh, I understand. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. As I said that, Brian laughed sheepishly. I remember thinking he seemed honest and rather nice. My restaurant is indeed in such an odd location. But the taste is so good that many people have fallen in love with it and have been coming back for decades.
It's delicious, I've become quite the fan.
Brian confessed. True to his word, Brian became a regular customer and started talking a lot with me, the owner. Brian graduated from a top university and worked at a renowned company. He was the epitome of an elite. I had never been close to someone like that before. Not only was Brian brilliant at what he did, but he also had good looks. He was tall and slender with a well-defined face. Undoubtedly, he was the type who would be popular. Brian was 7 years older than me, so he was 34 at the time. I assumed he was married due to his age, but he laughed and said he was single. I've been living a life of work, and more work, and before I know it, I'm at this age. How silly of me. His easygoing manner, humorous conversation, and gentle tone made it seem like he wasn't an elite. Before I knew it, I had fallen for Brian. It was probably unrequited love. In his eyes, I was just the restaurant owner, and he was a regular patron. But then, out of the blue, he proposed to me.
Helen, would you consider being in a relationship with me, with marriage in mind?
I couldn't believe it. My heart was pounding. Could such a wonderful person really have feelings for me? It felt like a dream. Like Prince Charming had come for me. I felt like the protagonist of a fairy tale, and intoxicated by that dream, I accepted. A year later, I married Brian. But this fairy tale didn't end with, and they lived happily ever after. After we got married, the next chapter of the story turned into something much darker, like a picture book painted over completely in black.
Hey, you're my wife now. You understand what that means, right?
Brian said this soon after we started living together as a married couple.
Yes, we got married, so I'm your wife now.
I could only respond with confusion to his sudden change in tone. Then Brian suddenly raised his voice.
What kind of a response is that? I'm your husband, so you should address me with more respect. A wife should respect and honor her husband, don't you even know that?
I was too shocked to respond right away. What had happened? It was as if the Brian I knew had been replaced by someone else. A transformation from a prince to a tyrant. I wondered what kind of a witch had cast such a spell.
Listen, I'm an elite, you know that, right? You have to become a wife worthy of me. Prepare yourself for the training I'm going to give you.
From that day on, I was constantly ordered around by Brian. First, Brian demanded perfect housekeeping from me.
Make sure the house is immaculate, ready for anyone to come over at any time. That's a housewife's job. Don't you dare embarrass me.
My family ran a restaurant, so honestly, our house was never in a pristine state. My father was busy in the kitchen, and my mother was helping out too. There was no way we could manage perfect housekeeping. My parents did their best, tidying up and cleaning whenever they spotted a mess, but running a restaurant while raising me was overwhelming. My grandparents on my father's side lived far away, but my grandparents on my mother's side looked after me during particularly busy hours. That was how we managed to get by.
I can't do that. I mean, I have my restaurant to take care of. Don't make excuses before even trying. You don't even want to make any effort.
I managed to put the conversation to rest at the time by saying that I would try, but when I actually started, I realized that it was impossible.
Look, I have the restaurant to handle, so can't we hire someone for the housework?
It wasn't like I was saying I wouldn't do any housework at all. I just wanted to hire a housekeeper to make up for what I couldn't manage, but Brian didn't like the idea.
Why should we waste money like that? The best thing about a housewife is that she's free labor.
I was shocked by his words. Free labor, is that how Brian saw me? It became crystal clear at that moment.
That little restaurant of yours, who knows when it'll go under? You're lucky you found someone like me to support you. Be grateful and serve me well.
When we were dating, he had praised me for taking over the business from my parents at such a young age. That's one of the reasons why I fell for Brian. It might be a small place, but it meant a lot to me, and he had once praised my dedication to keeping it going.
Just keep the restaurant as insurance. If need be, we can sell it. It's worth something even if it's small. But if it starts losing money, shut it down immediately. It's not worth keeping if it's running at a loss.
That's what he said.
So that's what you've wanted all along. I'll never let go of that restaurant, no matter what. Just do your best, but don't forget that I'm only allowing this to be your little hobby because I feel sorry for you. Remember, it's because I care about you," Brian said while laughing. From that day on, I started thinking about getting a divorce. But I still had some affection for Brian. I wanted to prove him wrong and make him apologize. I was sure he would understand someday. I worked like a horse with these mixed feelings. Indeed, it's a small restaurant, sustained mostly by regulars. Nowadays, most people opt for chain restaurants which offer the same taste wherever you go. That's why big chains thrive. But there will always be those who seek a nostalgic taste. That's why I want to keep the restaurant going. That desire never fades. While maintaining a seemingly peaceful marriage on the surface, I worked hard for the day I would prove Brian wrong. And to that, Brian half mockingly, half amusedly would say, "Wow, you're really trying hard, still keeping that restaurant going, huh? I thought it would fail soon." "Well, as long as you take care of the house, you can keep going." I was already doing it without being told. Every morning, I'd wake up early to prepare breakfast for Brian, wake him up, and see him off, then rush out of the house. I'd spend a busy day at the restaurant, and then after closing, I'd shop for groceries, come back home to cook dinner, and clean. When Brian returned, I'd serve him dinner, get ready for a shower, do the laundry, prepare for the next day, and take care of anything else left to do. I was cutting back on sleep, scheduling every day tightly to manage everything without wasting a moment. "If the house ever gets messy, I'll make you close down the restaurant immediately and sell it." Brian was probably waiting for that day. I could feel it. Perhaps he married me intending to have a housewife with assets who provides housekeeping services for free. Back then, I was infatuated with Brian. He knew that and thought I'd never stand up to him. That's probably why he chose me. It surprised me how much you dedicate yourself to the restaurant. I thought once we got married, you'd only have eyes for me. I feel betrayed," Brian said one day. I thought I was the one being betrayed. I had believed he understood me when he chose me. I wanted to say that, but I swallowed my words. And then things got worse. "My mother has fractured a bone and is hospitalized. Sarah." Brian's parents live in the neighboring state. I don't want to say this, but like Brian's true colors, they are not the most pleasant people. Brian is our pride and joy. A graduate from a top university, working at a leading company, an elite man. You've been chosen by Brian, so you should be grateful and serve us well. Helen doesn't realize her luck. Someone married to our son, Brian, should be greeting us in a fancy cocktail dress and a bottle of decent wine. That's right. It's just as I expected. A daughter of a restaurant owner must be poorly educated. That was the first thing they said to me when we met. Not only were they rude to me, but they insulted my parents too. I was about to say something back when my anger got the better of me, but Brian intervened to settle the matter, so I decided to keep my mouth shut for the moment. "Come now, Helen is still young. It's understandable that she lacks in certain areas. Think of it as having a potential to grow." I should have realized the true nature of this family at that point, but back then, I was convinced that Brian was protecting me, and that he was on my side. After that, my in-laws continued to make snide remarks every time something happened. "I can't believe Brian married a restaurant owner's daughter." Right, someone like Brian could have married a daughter of a CEO or an executive. Think about that, Helen. Be a good daughter-in-law to us. My in-laws seemed to think that only those working in big corporations like Brian were successful, and anyone in other professions, especially the service industry, were second-class citizens. But even so, Sarah's injury is unfortunate. I'd have to at least pay her a visit. But then Brian said something shocking. "It's a femur fracture. She'll need hospitalization and rehabilitation for a while after surgery. Can you look after her?" Wait, but aren't hospitals still enforcing visitation restrictions? I can maybe visit or bring something, but looking after her might not be allowed, right? Who said anything about the hospital? I mean, after my mother is discharged and comes to live with us.
It took me a moment to understand what he meant. As I was silently pondering, Brian dropped the bombshell. Don't be dense. Once my mother is discharged, she's moving in with us, along with my father.
What?
You have a problem with that? Of course, it was a problem. Even the thought of living alone with Brian was unbearable, let alone with his parents too. I can't take care of Sarah, I said firmly. I have my restaurant to run. It's impossible. Professional care would be best for her. Why should we pay for that when you're here? Then, close down the restaurant. Sell it and use that money for the family. Brian made an outrageous demand. I won't sell the restaurant. And I won't take care of Sarah.
You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper. So that was the plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave, I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk. Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that. All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again. Then consider yourself fired.
What?
Brian didn't hear it clearly and asked again, but I didn't bother repeating myself. I need to get things ready, so I can't do it right now. Fine, there's still time before my mother is discharged. They say she needs at least a month in the hospital. If you're ready by then, that's fine. Brian must have thought I had agreed and went to the bedroom, satisfied. I had been preparing for this for 2 years. Everything had been for this very moment. But even so, I still had hope. That Brian would return to the man he was before we got married. I didn't want to believe that the person I loved so much, that those happy days, were a lie. That's what I thought. But all my hopes were shattered. I had to make up my mind. I was ready. Hello, it's Helen. No, it didn't work out. It can't be helped. Let's take action. I made a call to someone, ready to move forward. A month later, an article made it to the front page of the economics section of the newspaper. The story was that the food manufacturer for which Brian worked for was about to be acquired by a restaurant group in a large stock buyout.
What the hell is this?
In frustration, Brian yanked the newspaper from side to side, tearing it in half.
This is a joke. We're a leading company. And now they're selling us out to some stupid restaurant group.
Brian crumpled the torn newspaper and hurled it against the wall.
Damn it, what's gonna happen? This can't be true.
Brian turned on the TV as if waking from a nightmare, only to see the same news. It seemed the acquisition was real.
Damn it, how did it come to this?
Brian slumped down on the sofa and ruffled his hair in frustration. There's nothing we can do about what's already happened. Here, take this. What's this? Brian looked at what I offered him and his eyes widened in shock. He seemed very surprised.
What is this?
It's a divorce petition.
I can see that. What the heck do you think you're doing giving me this?
Brian crumpled the divorce papers and threw them too. That too, after the newspaper? No matter how much you crumple it, nothing will go back to how it was.
Why do you want a divorce? I demand an explanation.
Are you kidding? Have you forgotten? You're the one who mentioned it. Brian went silent, likely remembering his own words. I won't take care of Sarah or live with your parents. If you don't like it, get a divorce. Those were your words, right?
I did say that. But well, I was bluffing, thinking you wouldn't listen to me otherwise.
So it was a threat. Brian didn't respond. I married you because I loved you. I trusted you. But you deceived me and betrayed me repeatedly. That's why I've decided to get a divorce. I took another divorce petition from the file and placed it in front of Brian. I have spare copies, so feel free to crumple that too. If I run out, I can get more or download it and print it out. We live in such convenient times. Brian stared at the divorce petition placed before him again.
This is a lie, right?
He looked at me with pleading eyes. No, it's true. This is reality.
You're not that kind of woman, right? You wouldn't do something so cruel when I'm so vulnerable.
It seemed like he wasn't going to accept it so easily. Think about what you've done, and what you've tried to do to me. Which do you think is worse? I took my time to tell Brian.
Do you remember what you said after we got married? That a wife should respect and honor her husband?
Brian didn't respond.
I respected you even before we got married. That's why I decided to marry you. But after hearing those words, my respect for you vanished. People who trample on others are also trampling on their own feelings.
Brian looked down, silent.
You saw me only as free labor, a housekeeper. And the restaurant I cherished, you saw as an asset to cash in. I realize that, but still, I loved you. Helen.
Brian looked up at me with hope.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you cared about me so much. That's why I acted harshly. Please forgive me.
Brian held my hand, tears streaming down his face.
I'll change, I promise. Give me another chance. I'll treasure you this time.
I'm sorry. I pulled my hand away from Brian's.
Why not? We loved each other, didn't we? We can still make it work.
No, it's too late. I've lost all faith in you.
That's why I decided to acquire your company. What?
Brian looked at me, bewildered.
The big restaurant group that acquired your company, with 1,900 full-time employees, I'm the president of that company.
Unfortunately, I'm letting you go.
No, this isn't the time for jokes. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?
Brian half laughed, but it was the truth. Never mind that for now. Here, take this. Brian took the envelope I handed him with confusion, then screamed in disbelief as he checked the contents.
What's this?
It was evidence of Brian's affairs. There were documents from a private investigator and numerous photos.
A female employee in the secretarial department, a subordinate's wife, a recent college graduate, a woman from a business partner, a girl from a club, and who else?
The list was astonishingly long. Brian is attractive. And with his elite status, it's no surprise women flocked to him. Amazing, isn't it?
Your affairs are too many to count on both hands. I'll be seeking compensation for all of them, from you and the women involved. Hey!
What? Brian, looking at the documents and photos, turned pale and trembled. He tried to speak to me, but didn't seem to know what to say.
The problem is the time and place of the affairs. A lot of them seem to happen when you were supposed to be working. I think this is a breach of trust against the company.
A lot of them occurred when he was out of the office on business during working hours, making sales rounds, on business trips, and entertaining clients. Brian was with his mistresses instead, as detailed in the documents.
You've been investigating me like this all along?
Yes, that's right.
That's not fair.
Brian threw the documents and photos at me.
You used the money I earned for this? No, not a single dollar of your money was used. Liar. You don't have that kind of money.
Brian, being an elite, had a high salary. He saw me as free housekeeping labor, but he did contribute financially to the household.
You know I'm the owner of a restaurant, right? Yeah, that near bankrupt one. Just a hobby, isn't it? Owner, huh? Ridiculous. It's true that if you look at the finances alone, the restaurant doesn't seem that prosperous. But there's more to it.
I told Brian the whole truth.
That restaurant was for gathering information. I was researching the current trends, what sells, and things like that.
That restaurant, established by my parents, was the first of many. Now, it's a major chain with locations not just in America, but abroad too. The company that acquired Brian's workplace was the parent company of that restaurant chain.
This must be a lie.
It is not a lie. The location of the original restaurant was ideal for market research. The first restaurant thrived mainly due to my father's skills. But the reason we could expand was due to understanding customer preferences.
You never talked about your family business like this before. You tricked me.
I didn't trick you. I just didn't tell you. When I started dating Brian and considering marriage, my father advised me to wait and see. In hindsight, my father saw through your true nature. He said to tell you if you didn't change after our marriage. Back then, I would have married Brian regardless of his opposition. That's why my father had said such a thing. And what I told Brian when we married wasn't a lie. My father was ill and struggling to continue working. So, he had my uncle take his place as the company president, and he pretty much retired. That's why it was true when I said I took over the restaurant, because my father was sick. He had undergone major surgery and difficult treatments. As an only child, I was still too young to take over the company, so I was in charge of the restaurant, partly so that I could learn new things. My business degree couldn't make up for my extreme lack of experience. I was told that if I failed to run the restaurant, I wouldn't be acknowledged as the successor. So, I worked hard to continue my father's legacy and earn his approval. My father probably warned me to keep quiet, fearing the business might be taken over or ruined by a bad marriage. But I thought Brian was different, and I wanted to prove I could be honest with him. That's why I remained silent. Well, I was disappointed.
My father even told me that if Brian wasn't the man I thought, I should resolve it by myself.
Of course, that's what I should do. There was no way I could run such a large corporation if I couldn't handle something as small as this.
So, I've lived these past 2 years thinking about how I would make you regret it if you didn't show any remorse. Though, at the same time, I hoped you'd change your ways.
I sighed, picked up my mobile phone, and made a call. The person on the other end answered right away, so I just said what I needed to and hung up. Immediately, the bell to the front entrance rang, so I unlocked it to let the visitor in.
Who's that?
Just watch. Soon the doorbell rang, and I invited the guest in.
The company president.
It was the former president of the company Brian worked for, soon to be mine. The former president bowed stiffly to me. Please proceed. The former president silently handed Brian a document.
Termination notice.
It was an official document. Brian was being fired for misconduct, including meeting women during work hours and charging personal expenses as business entertainment. In exchange for firing Brian, I promised the former president that he could continue as the company's president, and he agreed to the condition.
Even minor misdeeds can accumulate into a major offense. What you did constitutes a serious breach of trust. It's only fair that you're dismissed.
Brian stood in shock, but I had no intention of letting him off the hook.
If you understand, would you please leave now? Why should I? This is my house.
This place is rented, right?
The landlord says you can't stay here anymore.
He doesn't want to rent it to you. Brian looked completely confused. I decided to elaborate further.
I bought this apartment. And you seem to have forgotten, but the lease was only until last month. So, you no longer have the right to live here. I don't plan on renewing the contract.
Brian was speechless.
We'll have to decide on asset division and who gets which furniture, but for now, I don't want to see your face. Could you go back to your parents' house? Sarah is about to be discharged from the hospital, isn't she?
Sarah was scheduled to be discharged in a few days after a month-long stay in the hospital.
Go back and prepare for Sarah's return.
We'll communicate through our attorneys about what comes next. Please take him with you. I handed Brian over to the former company president. If you come back, I'll report you for trespassing. Even though we're not officially divorced yet, if the landlord says no, it's a no. Brian left the room with the former company president silently. There was still more work to be done, but I have reached the end of a chapter. After Brian went back home, I started receiving calls persistently from my in-laws, having heard about the divorce.
Helen, you're so amazing. Why didn't you tell us? You truly are our son's wife. We are so proud of you.
Getting a divorce must be a joke, right? Helen, you loved Brian so much. Can't you forgive a fling or two? That's just men being men. At first, they were arrogant, but when they realized my resolve to get a divorce was firm, they resorted to threats.
You got Brian fired. What are you going to do about that? We'll demand compensation. What you did is unthinkable for our son's wife. Hiring a detective to investigate your husband's behavior. Imagine how it would affect your reputation if it gets out.
When I confidently told them to go ahead with claiming compensation and leaking information about me, they finally shifted to begging.
Helen, I'm really sorry. It felt like you took Brian away from me, and I acted spitefully. Please understand. What are we supposed to do if you leave us? I apologize if I upset you. So, please forgive Brian. If you can't forgive him, how about just us? We were family once, after all.
Of course, I refused everything they had said to me.
I've said it over and over again, but I'm divorcing Brian. If you keep pestering me, I'll report you to the police and consider taking legal action. After consulting with my attorney, we sent them a formal warning, and they finally stopped contacting me. I made sure Brian paid the compensation. And I ensured it was paid from the assets we divided. Luckily, his high salary meant he had savings. Now jobless and without savings, he's back living with his parents. He found a job in the service industry that he once looked down upon, working from early morning till late at night. Considering he had affairs with other men's wives, he's also facing compensation claims from their husbands. I hope he works hard and pays it all off, no matter how many years it takes. I talked to the women with whom he had cheated. All of them apologized, saying they weren't serious and were just in it for Brian's money and elite status. While I had anticipated this, any relationship with a married person, regardless of the reason, is a legal offense and can be subject to a lawsuit. I made sure these women understood the severity of their actions by legally requiring them to pay compensation. Hopefully, this will be a lesson, and they won't repeat the same mistake. After that, I officially took over as the company president from my uncle. I appointed my uncle as the chairman to continue receiving his help and advice. Although my father's condition has stabilized, he's not in a state to work. But seeing me take over the company, he started seeing to bring him peace, and his spirits noticeably improved. Occasionally, he still offers his thoughts and advice, which I value greatly. I hope my parents live as long as possible. Right now, that's my greatest wish. I've caused them so much worry by getting involved with such an awful man. I gave my parents a lot of trouble, but I resolved my problems all on my own. That seemed to make my father approve of me as a manager. Next time, I want to meet someone better and reassure my parents as a daughter, but I'm not sure I want to get married for a while. This company is like my child now. I want to raise it and help it grow bigger and better. As a company president, I'm just taking my first steps. But I believe a bright future lies ahead on this path. And of course, I'm still running that restaurant. This restaurant was where my parents began their business, and it was the start of my career. In a way, it's like my first child that I shall cherish for the rest of my life. I want to treasure it forever so that I never forget where I came from. If you don't want kids, maybe I'll have them. Maybe I should just divorce and we have them.
Suddenly, the word divorce popped up at an oddly serene dinner table. My heart skipped a beat, and I inadvertently stopped what I was doing. But I quickly lifted my head and faced the two of them again.
All right, we're getting a divorce, then.
Huh? Despite being the ones to bring it up, both looked surprised at my response. Seeing their reaction, I immediately backtracked on the divorce talk.
Right, of course. You're obviously joking.
Osamand laughed, relieved. Next to him, Carly covered her mouth with her hand, chuckling along. But the truth is, I do want a divorce. However, I haven't gathered enough evidence yet. I'm far from ready to make a move. I want to set things straight with Osamand and others, but only when everything is in order. This conversation only made me more determined than before.
Yeah, just kidding.
I joined in on Osamand's laughter, making sure not to let on that I'm serious about wanting a divorce. My name is Lena. I'm 27. I used to work in an office at a design company, but after getting married, I quit my job to become a housewife. My husband's name is Osamand. We met at a party I was invited to by a friend. I've never been good at socializing. On days off, I'd stay in, and even on work days, I'd skip out on drinking parties and outings, preferring to spend time alone. Because of that lifestyle, it's no surprise I hadn't had a boyfriend in a while. All my friends and juniors were either married or in relationships. It made me anxious whenever the topic of boyfriends or husbands came up. I felt the pressure to find someone soon, when this opportunity came from a friend. My friend was surprised I took up the invitation.
Wow, I invited you without expecting much. I know I'm the one that invited you, but did something happen?
Nothing really. Just had a change of heart. I'm getting to that age where I should find a boyfriend and start thinking about the future.
I shared my thoughts without holding anything back. Then,
I see. You've had a change of heart. I'm glad I invited you,
my friend said, laughing. On the day of the party, I went to the bar, which was the venue, with my friend, and a few people were already there, chatting and having a good time. She easily joined the group, but I couldn't. Even as the party started, I couldn't manage to join in on the conversations and ended up drinking alone at the edge of the room. I wondered if it was impossible for someone like me to find a boyfriend. I stared at my nearly empty glass, lost in thought. The lively chatter from around me filled the air. My friend seemed to be enjoying the party, being at the center of the conversation. I envied those who could genuinely enjoy such gatherings. I wished I could be like that. As I looked at my watch thinking about leaving early, someone approached me.
Hey, what's up?
You look pretty lonely over here.
Huh.
A man started talking to me. That man would later become my husband, Osamand. Would you like to talk with me?
Yes, I would.
Osamand took a seat next to me, placing the drink he had been sipping on the table. We had introduced ourselves earlier, so we knew each other's names. So, you're Lena, right?
Yes, and you're
Osamand.
That's right. Thanks for remembering my name.
Osamand thanked me, looking genuinely pleased. After that, we didn't join the rest of the group, opting instead to continue our conversation just between the two of us. We started with work, then moved on to hobbies, and even where we lived, the topics varied.
Wow, really?
Osamand seemed to pick up on my nervousness and made an effort to keep the conversation lively. Before I knew it, I was swept up in his enthusiasm, and my nervousness had vanished. Osamand was having fun talking, and he seemed genuinely interested in listening to me. Eventually, I found myself becoming fond of Osamand. I myself thought I was too easy. But for someone who doesn't usually talk to people, this was enough to make me take notice. After the party ended, we went to a bar to continue drinking, just the two of us. Alone with me, Osamand's demeanor changed completely from before, becoming more composed. Perhaps he had been playing up to the atmosphere before. Yet, his willingness to listen to me remained unchanged. Seeing this side of Osamand made my feelings for him grow.
Today was fun. Thank you.
Thank you as well. We hit it off so well that we exchanged our numbers and agreed to meet again. After that, we started seeing each other frequently. Could things really go this smoothly? The moment I decided to find a boyfriend, I was invited to a party and met someone compatible. I had expected more of a struggle, so I was a bit taken aback by how easily things were progressing. About 2 months after the party, Osamand confessed his feelings, and we started dating. He was just as kind to me as he had been before we were officially together. Whenever we both had time off, we would go on drives or trips, spending time together. That said, Osamand was busy with work, so our schedules didn't always match up, and we probably saw each other less often than other couples might. But we made up for it with phone calls and emails. I was satisfied with that. To say I wasn't lonely would be a lie. I wanted to see Osamand more, to be with Osamand more. Those feelings only grew stronger day by day. However, on the days we could meet, I was filled with happiness. Each time, I was reminded of how much I liked Osamand. Then one day, during our usual routine, Osamand suddenly introduced me to a woman. I want you to meet someone. Carly. She's an old friend of mine.
Pleased to meet you.
The woman introduced as Carly was Osamand's childhood friend. From what I heard, Osamand and Carly had been close since kindergarten, and they still visited each other's parents' homes and went out to eat together. Carly has always been such a great person. Oh, remember that time?
Wait, why are you bringing that up now? I mean, it did happen, but...
Osamand and Carly were completely engrossed in their own world, chatting away. Naturally, I had no idea how to navigate this situation. All I could do was watch them with a forced smile, feeling out of place. Noticing my discomfort, Osamand said,
I'm sorry. I figured you'd be seeing Carly around, so I thought I'd introduce you.
Honestly, I wondered why I needed to get along with his childhood friend in the future. But I wasn't strong enough to voice such thoughts there and then. I just went along with it, trying not to upset Osamand and his friend.
Oh, is that so?
But you didn't know I was meeting with you today, right? Sorry if it feels like I just showed up out of the blue.
Not at all. Please don't worry about it. I'm really glad to meet you. Really? Thank you.
Carly smiled sweetly, thanking me. However, as time went on, Osamand and Carly continued to create their own little world, leaving me feeling left out. At first, I desperately tried to join in their conversation, but eventually, I realized it was futile and just sat there, sipping my coffee alone. If they were going to talk amongst themselves, I wondered why I was even needed there. I felt a mix of sadness and emptiness, silently observing them. The situation didn't change until 2 hours later when I finally managed to excuse myself from their company, after being treated like I wasn't there. I'm really sorry. It's been a while since I've seen Carly.
I see. No, it's totally fine. It's good that you got to catch up after so long.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. Osamand apologized, seeming genuinely remorseful. It appeared he was aware that he had done something wrong. I couldn't help feeling slightly angry that he had created this exclusive world with Carly in the first place. No, really, it's okay. I accepted Osamand's apology without holding any grudge. After that incident, Osamand never brought up Carly again. Perhaps he realized it was a sensitive issue. He started to check on my feelings more, likely thinking he had indeed made a mistake. At the time, I felt lonely and insecure, but deep down, I knew it wasn't something to make a big deal about. After all, they were childhood friends. It made sense that they'd get caught up in conversation after a long time apart. However, I couldn't bring myself to say I was okay with Carly. I didn't want to dredge up the topic myself. A few weeks after meeting Carly, Osamand's behavior returned to normal, and it felt like our daily life had resumed. A year later, Osamand proposed, and we got married. The wedding was attended by family, friends, colleagues, and Carly. Carly seemed genuinely happy for us.
Congratulations on your wedding. I'm sure you know, but Osamand is really a great guy, and I believe you'll be very happy together. Thank you.
Carly made a point to come over to me and speak. Her smile was a complex mix of happiness and loneliness. After the wedding, we returned to the new apartment we had rented as a married couple. Though we were already officially married and lived together, I remembered when we moved in and felt somewhat embarrassed. Osamand was right there beside me. Just the thought of being able to share the same space with him from now on filled my heart with joy. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of our future together. I wanted to spend forever with Osamand. However, this happy life did not last long. Even after marriage, Osamand was still busy with work, but he made sure to spend as much time with me as possible. Except for when he had work dinners or special occasions, he would always come home before the date changed, and despite being tired himself, he would offer kind words to me as I did the housework. He was with me all weekend, taking me on trips and shopping. It might have seemed ordinary, but I felt truly happy with just that. But then, suddenly, a certain person started to intrude on our lives, significantly changing our routine. It was during a weekend shopping trip in town with Osamand. I spotted a familiar figure. It was Carly. She had seen us too and hurried over with a happy expression.
Hey, Osamand, Lena. Carly. What a coincidence.
As I was about to greet her, Osamand casually reached out and tousled Carly's hair.
Hey, Osamand. You're messing up my hair.
Sorry. I just can't help it when I see you. I understood that they were close, but seeing them like this pained my heart. Osamand didn't seem to think it was a big deal, and Carly didn't seem to mind. They started talking without paying any attention to me, reigniting a sense of emptiness within me. I didn't know what to do, so I just looked at nearby products and thought vaguely about where to go next. Despite being able to see me, Carly continued to talk to Osamand without any concern. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes before ending. Sorry. I didn't realize you two were on a date today. My bad. It's fine. Right, Lena? Yeah, it's fine. Unable to deny it, I pretended not to mind. Since that day, Carly began to appear more frequently wherever Osamand and I went out together. I thought it was a coincidence the first 2 times, but after it kept happening, I couldn't help but think they were arranging it behind my back. Whenever they met, they acted as if it were a chance encounter.
Wow.
What a coincidence. That became their routine phrase. Once, I gathered the courage to ask, are you two in touch? Seeing each other so often when we're out, it seems unlikely to be just coincidence. However, they wouldn't admit it. No, it's just a coincidence. Right, Carly?
Yeah. Just a coincidence. Happened to be, right?
They laughed it off together. But their expressions seemed almost mocking. They would hold hands or touch each other's cheeks every time they met. Their level of physical affection seemed excessive. Despite being told they had always been this way, claiming it was normal for childhood friends, something about it didn't sit right with me.
Wait, should we stop holding hands? Lena looks mad. Sorry, Lena. But Carly is really just an old friend. There's absolutely nothing weird between us, so don't worry, okay? Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Well, it's not like I like you or anything. After Carly's comment, Osamand cheerfully placed his hand on her head again. Despite my anger, Osamand continued his physical affection with Carly. Carly didn't seem to mind at all. Is it normal for childhood friends to be this close? Watching Osamand and Carly, my distrust grew day by day. After several similar incidents, I mustered up the courage to speak to Osamand. Osamand. What's up? Osamand looked at me with his usual kind smile. About Carly. I know she's your childhood friend, and I understand you're close, but could you maybe reduce the physical affection a bit? Reduce it? Yeah, since we're married. Osamand's face turned serious for a moment before he relaxed again. That brief serious expression scared me, making me regret bringing it up. Sorry. Was it bothering you? A little. Normally, Osamand would laugh it off and agree. But he was different that day. But you know, Carly and I are just childhood friends, right? There's really nothing to worry about. What does that mean? Just don't think too much about it. Consider it part of our communication. Okay. With a troubled smile, he walked away from me. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel anxious, regretting my question and wondering if I had made an unreasonable request or upset Osamand. At the same time, I questioned if I was wrong. As his wife, I wanted him to limit his physical contact with Carly, even though they were childhood friends. Nonetheless, life with Osamand continued uneasily. A month after my request, nothing had changed. In fact, it seemed to get worse. Carly started to intrude on our home. She would come over on weekdays and weekends, eat, and then leave, with me preparing everything. Carly would just show up suddenly, spending time talking to Osamand on the sofa. Even when I asked for help with carrying things. You can handle that much on your own, right? Yeah. She would dismiss my request. By this time, Osamand had completely taken Carly's side. He hardly listened to me and always spoke in Carly's favor when I objected. Seriously. Lena can't do anything by herself. Hey, don't say that in front of her, that's the worst. They laughed at me as if I were a joke. Naturally, I didn't feel good about it. Whenever I returned to the kitchen without saying anything, I would end up being criticized. Is she sulking? Over just this? Come on, that's a bit much, isn't it? I continued preparing the meal, trying to ignore their voices. It seemed only fair that she help with preparations since she came over uninvited. Yet, why should I be the one to face complaints? Moreover, being accused of sulking or being incapable of doing anything alone was incredibly rude. Carly came over several times a week. And she always made sure to have a meal before leaving. Even during meals, there was no sense of calm. Carly would sit next to Osamand, constantly pestering him. Osamand seemed to not mind her actions. They would feed each other or share laughs, looking entirely like a couple to anyone observing. But it turns out Carly actually had a fiancé named Raymond. He worked at the same company as Carly, holding a rather prestigious position. Though I heard he was abroad currently. Still, I thought it inappropriate for someone engaged to engage in such excessive physical intimacy with their childhood friend. Carly, could you maybe stop coming over so often? The food costs are adding up, and it's more work to cook. However, Osamand just laughed off my request. Come on. Carly's single right now, and she says it's lonely going home to an empty house. Maybe we should be a bit more understanding.
But
it's fine, really.
Osaman didn't seem inclined to criticize Carly at all. In fact, he seemed happier with her than with me. I wondered why Osaman couldn't show me the same smile. Eventually, I began to despise not only Carly but also the sight of Osaman smiling at her. A year into our marriage, Carly's intrusions continued unabated. By this time, I had given up, no longer complaining and simply catering to Carly. Maybe this was the arrangement Osaman and Carly desired. Their physical intimacy intensified, and they appeared even happier than before. I dreaded that this lifestyle would persist until Carly got married. The thought filled me with gloom. Divorce. The word started to cross my mind occasionally. Yet, I found it hard to take any action. Time kept moving forward. But one day, a comment from Carly prompted me to decide on divorce. "Hey, aren't you two planning to have kids?"
What?
Her tactless remark made me exclaim in surprise. Osaman and I had decided not to have children yet. And we might never do so. That's what I thought I had said, but Lena's just really against it.
What? I never said that.
I hadn't said anything of the sort. Osaman was trying to look good in front of Carly. I glared and contradicted him. Really, Lena?
It's been about a year since you got married, right? Why would you be against it?
No, I never said I was against. But Carly wasn't listening at all.
Didn't Osaman like kids? Lena, isn't it selfish to say no?
I'm not being selfish. I never said that.
It's a real concern.
Osaman continued to take Carly's side. Even in this situation, choosing his childhood friend over his wife. It made me realize for the first time that perhaps I couldn't continue going on with him. Then Carly said something outrageous, pushing me further.
If you don't want kids, maybe I'll have them. Maybe I should just divorce and we have them.
Osaman joined in with her laughter, not rebuking Carly's words. The casual mention of divorce shocked me, my heart raced, and I stopped what I was doing. Divorce. There are jokes that can be made and ones that shouldn't be. The inability to distinguish between the two was exasperating. However, I quickly faced them again.
All right, we're getting a divorce, then.
Huh? They were surprised, even though they brought it up. I quickly corrected the notion of divorce.
Just kidding. Maybe it's time we started thinking about kids. Right, of course. You're obviously joking.
Osaman laughed, relieved, while Carly covered her mouth beside him, smiling joyously. Such a happy occasion. But the truth was, I did want a divorce. Despite joking about it, I couldn't shake the thought. I'll really get a divorce. Annoyingly, Carly's remark made me decide to divorce Osaman. Yet, it was too early to act.
Yeah, just kidding.
While formulating a plan in my head, I responded to Osaman. From observing Osaman and Carly up close, I suspected they might be having an affair. If that was the case, my options were limited. After much thought, I decided to hire a detective to gather evidence of the affair. I also tried to sneak a peek at Osaman's mobile phone to gather evidence myself. If they weren't cheating, I'd think of something else. But there was no need. When I checked Osaman's unlocked phone, there was an abundance of exchanges with Carly. The content was damning. From sweet conversations akin to those of lovers to suggestive messages and photos from hotel visits. There was more than enough to call it evidence. Considering Osaman didn't lock his phone, he seemed utterly careless. Further investigation by the detective confirmed they met frequently, mostly at hotels. The dates they met matched the days Osaman told me he'd be home late. He had lied about overtime and drinking parties to meet Carly. Even though I had a vague idea they were cheating, seeing concrete evidence made me feel indescribable. Meanwhile, Osaman and Carly's behavior didn't change. Carly kept coming over, eating, teasing me, and having fun. Unaware of what I was doing behind the scenes, their carefree actions seemed almost ludicrous. About a month after I started gathering evidence, Osaman invited me to an event.
There's an engagement party for Carly next month. Engagement party?
Yeah, you know Carly's fiancé is pretty high up, right? So, they need to have a sort of introduction party for the marriage.
So, her partner is coming back? Yeah, I think he might already be back.
The engagement party was irrelevant to me. The nerve of having such a party while engaging in an affair baffled me. I see. You've been invited? You should go, I said dismissively, somewhat irritated by Osaman's nonchalant laughter. But his response was unexpected. What are you talking about? You're coming with me.
Me? With you? Why?
Because you've always been so helpful to Carly. Oh, I see. She wants me there because I was helpful. Did they really invite me for that reason? My heart, already jaded, doubted even the reason for my invitation. But it would be rude to decline if I was invited. I thought you might not like parties. Can you manage?
No, I'll go. She invited me, after all.
Osaman's face brightened at my words.
Great. I'll let Carly know.
He seemed pleased as he went to his room with his phone, likely to contact Carly. In truth, I didn't want to go. The last thing I wanted was to see Carly happy. Why should I put myself in such a situation? However, as I prepared, an idea struck me. This plan could significantly change my current predicament. If so, using the party to my advantage was too good an opportunity to miss. What I'm about to do is low as a person. But I had been tormented by Osaman and Carly far more. A little revenge seemed justified. I prepared for the party and my plan of retaliation simultaneously. A month later, the day of the party arrived. Dressed appropriately, Osaman and I headed to the venue. Entering the venue, the opulence of chandeliers, carpets, and tables made me hesitate. The old Osaman would have reassured me here, but now he was busy scanning the room for someone. The guests all seemed important, making me feel out of place. Then, someone called out.
Osaman. You made it.
Turning toward the voice, I saw Carly, accompanied by a fresh-faced young man and a kindly-looking elderly couple. Apparently, the young man was Carly's fiancé, Raymond, and the elderly couple were her parents.
Congratulations, Carly. Thank you. And to you too, and Raymond too. Congratulations.
Thank you for your kind words. Osaman was unusually polite, a side of him I might have never seen before. Afterward, the party officially began with an announcement. After getting my meal, I returned to my seat to find Osaman and Carly's parents engaged in a lively conversation. Osaman, you and Carly are childhood friends, right? What was she like back then?
Carly back then? Hey, that's kind of embarrassing.
Osaman, unfazed by Carly's embarrassment, shared stories of her past.
She liked catching bugs and racing. We used to play tag a lot. You're really going to tell that story?
Carly squirmed, visibly embarrassed, but not entirely displeased. You two really are close. Watching you, it's like you're real siblings. I knew it was impolite, but I couldn't let myself be swept along if I wanted to execute my plan. I apologized internally as I interjected. Osaman seemed surprised by my interruption. Eyes wide.
Really? What's it like when Carly is with Osaman?
They're very close. How should I put it? They're like lovers.
Hey, Lena!
Osaman tried to stop me, but I continued. Carly often comes over for meals. She talks with Osaman the whole time I'm preparing food, looking very happy. During meals, they feed each other, hold hands. They're really close.
Hey, what are you?
I could feel the atmosphere freeze with my words. Carly's parents and Raymond looked at Osaman and Carly as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing.
Feed each other? Yes. Oh, I don't have photos of them feeding each other, but I do have pictures of them looking very close and their exchanges. Would you like to see? Hey! Lena!
Before Osaman could stop me, I opened my mobile phone to show the evidence gathered by the detective and myself. Raymond's face paled significantly upon seeing it.
Lena! Don't say weird things.
Weird? I'm just sharing the truth. This is how you two usually are. Osaman bit his lip, unable to say anything, his expression sour. But Carly lashed out at me. I felt vindicated. I had never seen Osaman and Carly look so frustrated. Deciding to go through with my revenge felt right.
Lena! Stop being freaky! And why do you have these photos? You shouldn't know about this. What? Did you hire a detective? Unbelievable!
Yes, I hired a detective. Why? Osaman was taken aback, realizing his actions with Carly, which went beyond mere childhood friendship, had been exposed.
Wanna know why?
I pulled out a completed divorce application from my bag and slammed it in front of Osaman. Let's get divorced. I can't take it anymore.
There's no need to say that here. Ever since we got married, Carly has been a constant presence in my life. We ran into her whenever we went out, and despite asking you to keep distance, she came over for dinner multiple times. And to top it off, you lied about working late to meet her at hotels. What's the point of being married then?
I let it all out. Osaman's loud response had drawn the attention of everyone in the venue.
I know it was wrong, but... If you knew it was wrong, why didn't you stop? Didn't I ask you to stop repeatedly?
Well, yes, but...
You don't really think it was wrong, do you? If you did, you wouldn't make excuses, you'd apologize.
Yeah, sorry. As Osaman and I argued, Carly attempted to intervene.
Hey, stop arguing here. Raymond, Mom, Dad, help.
However, the three of them did not take Carly's side.
Carly, those photos are real, aren't they? What? I'm asking if they're real. Not that you'd admit to cheating on your own.
Raymond looked profoundly disheartened. Understandably so. He must have been thinking of his fiancée Carly while working abroad, only to find her cheating with her childhood friend.
With so much evidence, I can't marry you. I was a fool to trust you. Wait. That's not true. They're all lies. Lies? So, you're saying Lena fabricated all this just to trap you and Osaman? Yes, that's right.
What? I couldn't hold back anymore. Was she not satisfied after manipulating me all this much? Still trying to control the narrative? Even now, Carly wouldn't admit to the affair, which infuriated me further, and I couldn't help but shout.
Who would do such a thing for you? I don't have the time for that. If I were to spend my time on you, I'd rather find a new hobby. What did you say?
Carly snapped back at my words. However, it was Carly's parents who stopped her.
Carly! Enough! Aren't you ashamed of yourself for doing such things?
Dad.
I never thought you would do something like this. Sure, you and Osaman were close, but I never imagined it would lead to this. It's truly shameful. What? Don't say it's shameful.
It is embarrassing. Raymond, I'm so sorry. It's understandable that you can't marry her now, and we won't mind if you call off the engagement. I too must apologize. I'm truly sorry. Watching her parents apologize to Raymond, Carly seemed to realize the irreparable mistake she had made. Tears streaming, she pleaded with Raymond.
I'm sorry. Please, don't call off the engagement.
I've had enough of you. I can't marry you.
No.
Osaman, witnessing Carly's situation, also begged for my forgiveness. Lena, I'm really sorry. I'll never cheat again. Please, let's not divorce. But I couldn't possibly trust Osaman's words.
Never cheat again? Unbelievable. I'm divorcing you. And I'll be claiming compensation too. Looks like your beloved Carly is getting dumped too, so you two might as well stay together. No, wait, think this over. Absolutely not. I can't live with someone like you any longer.
I grabbed the divorce papers again and pushed them toward Osaman.
There's no way we can rebuild from this. If you understand, agree to the divorce now.
Realizing I was serious, Osaman no longer resisted and agreed to the divorce. Finally, I could get away from this man. And I wouldn't have to see Carly's face anymore. This realization brought a smile to my face. A few days later, Osaman and I were officially divorced. I managed to claim compensation from both Osaman and Carly, which was satisfying. Carly and Raymond officially ended their engagement too. Despite the scandal, neither Osaman nor Carly quit their jobs. I thought they might leave their positions due to the divorce and scandal spreading through their companies. However, it seems they couldn't afford to quit, needing to pay the compensation. In a way, that served them right. Thinking so might mean I have a bad personality too. After the divorce was finalized, I apologized to Raymond for ruining the party. But he kindly said, "No worries. Thank you for letting me know about Carly's affair. It was a big help." A year after divorcing Osaman, I'm living comfortably alone, working a new job in a new city. I'm not sure what Osaman and Carly are up to, but the compensation is being deposited monthly, so they must be managing somehow. It seems I'm better off living alone than with someone. I probably won't marry again. I cherish these happy days and plan to continue enjoying my favorite tea alone.
Really, she should just hurry up and leave this world. She's such a nuisance.
We, the married couple, said about our son's wife whom we disliked. Ever since she started living with us, she kept making snide remarks. Day after day of accumulated stress. I wondered if we had to continue living with her verbal abuse and harassment. Then, one day, for some reason, she gifted me a luxury car worth $50,000.
I got it serviced, so it's ready to drive, LOL, she said.
Having no interest in luxury cars, I decided to let our son use it. However, when our son returned home 5 hours later in the new car, he was furious at his wife. She was surprised and began to apologize, tears streaming down her face. I am Addison, 65 years old. I live with my husband Ivan, our son Jake, and his wife Betty. Ivan has been a construction worker for many years, and even after retiring, he still helps out occasionally. After graduating from college, Jake joined a top company and then incredibly started his own. It's a web-related company, but I don't know much about it. However, the business seems to be doing well as he often happily talks about his colleagues. Originally, Jake and Betty lived separately from us. But, concerned about us aging and living alone, he moved his company closer to our home. After becoming independent, they started living with us, but instead of a happy family, a major problem arose. Betty, our son's wife. She constantly found reasons to complain about me and Ivan.
The bathroom is dirty. Ivan, don't use it, please.
How dare you speak like that?
But it's really dirty. It's just unhygienic.
Ivan, having worked in construction, sweats due to the physical nature of his job. Even though he's over 65 and retired, there's a serious shortage of workers. So he helps out a bit. He often bathes first. But it always causes a conflict with Betty. Both Ivan and Betty are straightforward, so they never got along. Betty has been in a bad mood ever since she moved in with us. Born and raised in the city, she probably hated the idea of living a bit more rurally with us.
What is this house? There are bugs.
Well, of course, there are bugs.
Unbelievable. I never had bugs when I lived in a condo. This is the worst. Get them out.
Our house is a single-family home. Jake rebuilt it, so it's pretty nice, but somehow, spiders and other bugs get in. There seem to be other dissatisfactions, like the department store being far away.
Addison, what is this meal? It's like something for the elderly. I can't eat this.
Is that so? I'm sorry.
Huh, this is really the worst. I'm ordering delivery. I don't need mine.
Betty said this and began fiddling with her smartphone, her knees shaking. Her harsh words made me shrink back. Betty ate pasta and hamburgers she ordered for delivery. Our meals were more vegetable-heavy, but even that seemed to irritate her. Also, she never did any housework.
I can't be bothered with chores. Addison, please take care of it.
All right. I always felt like a housekeeper in my own home, uncomfortable. The strong-willed Betty really didn't get along with Ivan. Ivan is also strong-willed and blunt, so they were always arguing.
Ivan, don't just sit on the sofa when you get home. Huh? Why do I have to listen to you? Because you've been working and sweating all day, right? It's dirty. Now I can't use the sofa. What did you say? Both of you, calm down.
It was always like this. However, Betty's attitude changed when Jake came home. She would be all smiles and charming when Jake was around. I'm home.
Jake, listen. Ivan was being mean to me again.
Again? Dad, don't be too harsh, okay? And Betty, Dad isn't a bad person, he's just blunt.
But Ivan's way of speaking is unacceptable. It's scary.
When Jake was home, Betty clung to him. We were so astounded by her quick change that we were speechless. Then, Betty's harassment escalated beyond verbal abuse. She rarely cooked, but one day she decided to make a meal. It was a weekday lunchtime, so only Betty and I were home. She seemed to be making pasta, warming up some ready-made meat sauce while looking at her smartphone. The moment I tasted the dish she served, I started coughing.
It's spicy. What is this? Haha, your face is so red. That's hilarious.
Betty laughed out loud. She put death sauce, hotter than Tabasco, into my portion. She laughed at me as I desperately drank water and coughed. Other harassments included setting the bath water too hot and deliberately dirtying the laundry. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to Jake. Sorry to bother you after work. It's about Betty. Things have been really bad lately. Bad in what way? She purposely put death sauce in my lunch, made the bath too hot to enter. If there are things she's unhappy about, I'm willing to try and fix them, but could you talk to her? Really? Jake was surprised and called Betty right away.
Are you harassing Mom? No way! I would never do that. What did Addison say about me? That's terrible. But you put death sauce in my lunch the other day. And there's more. That's not true.
I just wanted to spice things up a bit and it went wrong. I just wanted to make a delicious pasta for Addison. I'm not good at housework. Mom, I'm sorry. Betty isn't really good at housework. It wasn't on purpose. I'm sorry, I'll stay away from housework since I'm causing trouble, she said in a voice filled with false regret. I wanted to scream out that it was all lies. But I was too scared to think about Jake believing Betty and leaving. Jake, our beloved and only son, who we raised so carefully. I didn't want to become estranged from him at this age. I had no choice but to stay silent. Betty's harassment only got worse.
Addison, isn't the meal ready yet? You're so slow.
I was just cleaning. Can you wait a bit? You're so clumsy. You could help out a little.
But you said I shouldn't do housework. I'm not good at it, so it's your job, Addison.
Oh, and since the weather is nice today, please wash our room's sheets and pillow covers. She laughed heartily. I was exhausted, used by Betty every day without rest. Ivan was worried, but I had given up and said nothing. Then, one day, something happened. Betty came to me with a pleased look.
Addison, as a thank you for always taking care of me, please accept this gift.
She handed me car keys.
This car cost $50,000. It's been serviced and is ready to drive.
The dealer had driven it over, and a luxury car was parked in front of the house. Why all of a sudden?
I thought you could use a new one since your car is old.
Indeed, my car is getting old, but...
You're happy, right?
Thank you. Confused, I nodded at the pleased Betty. Satisfied with my reaction, Betty returned to her room. I didn't really need the luxury car. I decided to offer it to Jake and take his car, and talk to him that night. Betty gave me this car as a thank you, but I don't need a luxury car. You use it.
Really? Thank you. I'll try it out tomorrow.
Jake smiled happily. The next day, Jake went fishing in the new car. I was doing housework as usual, spending some quiet time with Ivan. Then Jake came home. But something was off, and he was slamming the door roughly. Ivan and I exchanged puzzled looks as an angry Jake entered the living room. Mom, you got that car from Betty, right?
Yes. It was suddenly delivered to our house yesterday. Is something wrong?
Did you touch it?
Of course not. It's a luxury car, so I thought it's best not to touch anything.
Is that so?
Betty!
After hearing my response, Jake called out loudly for Betty. Betty hurried down from her room on the second floor.
Jake, welcome back. What's up? Did you do something to the car you gifted Mom? What? What do you mean? I drove it today, and the engine oil was completely empty. What? You drove it?
I was shocked at Jake's words and covered my mouth with my hand. I was stunned to have given Jake a car with such a defect. Jake looked at Betty with a troubled expression.
It's like you wanted Mom to drive a car without oil. No way! I just wanted to give it as a thank you gift. Today, I planned to go see fishing and drove 2 hours to the spot. But the car made strange noises and even started to smell burnt, so I took it to the dealer, and they said there was no engine oil. Really? I can't believe there was a defect. Maybe the dealer forgot to put it in? I thought so too, but something strange happened. There was no warning light. Normally, when the engine oil runs out, a warning light should come on, but it didn't light up at all. What? I requested a proper service. That's a lie. What?
Betty's expression stiffened at Jake's words.
The person who repaired it happened to be the same person who serviced that car. He said it was strange to get a request to remove the oil and disable the warning light so that no one would notice. It was you, wasn't it? I don't know anything about it.
Betty had deliberately drained the engine oil to make me drive the car. The thought that the engine could fail or cause an accident was terrifying.
I never thought you would do such a thing. No, it's not true. Believe me.
It is true. Ivan, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. Everyone fell silent at Ivan's sudden intervention. Then, Ivan took something out from behind the living room plant. He showed Jake and the others what he removed from the plant. A camera? Yes. We've been troubled by her harassment for a long time. Thinking you wouldn't believe us, I consulted someone at work, and they suggested keeping evidence. A young guy at work, who's good with cameras and computers, secretly installed these in various places around the house. He set it up so we can view the data on a computer. Ivan then went to his room and brought back his computer. He wasn't usually a computer user, but he awkwardly operated it and played the camera footage. All the harassment and verbal abuse against me were recorded.
Addison didn't say anything, but it was clear she was being relentlessly worked and was visibly tired. I'm sorry, but if things don't change, we want you two to leave.
Jake clenched his fists tightly at Ivan's words.
It's not true. This is all a lie. What's a lie? You've been lying to me all this time, saying Mom and Dad harass you, are too strict. How could you do such things to someone's parents? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I won't do it again, okay? I can't live with someone who can casually do such terrible things to others. Let's get a divorce. Divorce? That's a problem. Do you know how much that car cost? I took out a loan and can't pay it back. So you married me for the money. That's not true.
I couldn't stand to look at Betty's flustered excuses. I always knew Betty was after the money. She must have been freely using Jake's credit card to shop. Everything she wore was branded. Jake seemed not to notice, maybe because he loved her, but I always thought she was that kind of person.
So how are you planning to pay back that loan? You going to work? Of course you'll work for it, right? Since you gave the car to Mom. If I pay for it, it becomes my gift. Well, I'll do the housework. I'll work and then you pay me. And I'll pay back the loan.
I was appalled at Betty, who seemed to think this was a brilliant idea.
So you plan to dump the work on Mom and just take the money? You never did any housework, always making Mom do it all. That's not true. I can do housework. Then go cook something right now. What?
Jake pointed to the kitchen. Betty's face turned pale and she broke out in cold sweat.
Let's see if your housework is worth paying for. The ingredients are all there.
I had gone to the grocery store that morning. So there should be enough of everything. Betty, thinking she couldn't refuse, trembled as she gripped the knife. She appeared to be trying to make omelette rice. Her awkwardly cut ingredients were unevenly sized. Food spilled from the frying pan as she cooked, and the area around the gas stove was a mess. And the eggs were all broken up. The last time she made pasta, she only warmed up canned sauce. It was clear to both me and Jake that she couldn't cook at all.
And you were going to ask for money for this? You underestimate the job. Do you know how hard I work to earn the money you spend so freely? And to think you'd harass my parents while living off my money. I know that. But I was stressed. I hate this countryside living. Let's go back to our condo in the city. So you took your frustration with country life out on Dad and Mom? Yes. I told Jake I didn't want to come here, but he wouldn't listen.
Honestly, it was hard to watch a grown woman over 30 whine like a child.
Please, let's just live together, the two of us.
Betty repeated her pleas without showing any sign of remorse, almost begging. Jake, coldly responding to Betty, who was looking up at him while holding his hand, said,
"Just get out. Now." "But I've learned my lesson. I'll work hard at housework from now on. Get out!"
Jake shouted loudly, dragging Betty out of the house and throwing her out the front door.
"I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm sorry,"
Betty cried and banged on the door. Ignoring her, Jake began to throw all her belongings out of the window. Eventually, her apologies turned into quiet sobs. Ivan and I stood in shock, not expecting Jake, usually so calm, to be this angry. After throwing all of Betty's things out, Jake returned to the living room and deeply apologized to us. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize sooner. I was blind. I thought living together would make things easier for Dad and Mom. But instead, I made things so much harder." "You finally woke up," Ivan said. "Yeah, I knew Betty was reckless with money, but I tolerated it since we weren't struggling financially. But I never thought her character was this bad. I almost lost Dad and Mom." Indeed, if there had been an accident with that car, there could have been serious injuries. The lack of a warning light isn't just a little prank. Thinking about it now sends chills down my spine. Addison had it the hardest. "If you're going to apologize to her." "Mom, I'm really sorry." "It's okay now, thank you for believing in us." I was relieved that Jake finally prioritized us. Just continuing our relationship with the Jake we'd always cherished was enough. Ivan, now that Betty was gone, didn't seem to care much, saying, "We got caught by a strange woman," and casually started watching TV. Betty, having picked up her belongings, was nowhere to be seen. After that, Betty called almost every day.
"It's your fault. It's all your fault,"
she would scream in a high-pitched voice until hanging up. When Ivan answered, she would just shout, but she seemed to cry and apologize when Jake picked up. The harassment wasn't just through phone calls. Garbage and dead rats started appearing at our front door.
"What's all this?"
"Let's get evidence first," Ivan said. He took photos with his mobile phone and cleaned up the mess, putting the carcasses in a plastic bag. There's no way such bold harassment would go unnoticed. It seemed Jake and our neighbors had noticed too. A neighbor friend called, worried about a strange woman lurking around our house. After asking Ivan's construction company to install security cameras, we caught the entire act on video. Seeing this, Jake sighed. Then the next day, Jake went to the police and filed a report. Eventually, Betty was charged with multiple crimes, including threats and obstruction of business. The recorded phone calls and the garbage left at our front door served as evidence. She also caused trouble by showing up every day at Jake's company to apologize. Such a selfish person. Her selfishness led to more fines, increasing her debts. After that, she apparently sold her branded bags and clothes to scrape by. She got a job, but, inexperienced in the workforce, she couldn't keep it and ended up working at a nightclub to make ends meet. Even there, she couldn't compete with the younger crowd and wasn't earning much, living day to day in a very old apartment. This is what I heard from a neighbor. After she caused a scene, crying and screaming at our front door, the neighbors asked what happened, so I told them everything. It quickly spread around the neighborhood, turning into gossip. I thought she would move far away, but without money to move, she's stuck near our lower rent area, living in an apartment about a 10-minute walk away. Any sighting quickly becomes neighborhood gossip. The neighbors, even more talkative than me, seem to know more about Betty's life. Rumors about her are endless, drunk every night, constantly fighting with different men. Jake's company is doing well, and he's busy every day. Seemingly done with romance for now, he's reaping the rewards of his hard work.
"How about going on a trip?" he suggested. "Really? That would be nice."
As an apology for all that happened. "Let's go to a spa." We still live together, Jake, Ivan, and me. Life has been peaceful and comfortable since Betty left. Jake occasionally takes us out for meals and shopping, showing his filial piety. I'm proud of how kind he has become. Is there anything you want? Jake often asks. But I don't really want anything. I'm not interested in luxury goods, and while I'm proud of Jake for starting his company, I don't want to splurge with his money. More than anything, I'm happy just living peacefully as a family of 3. Of course, I'd be happy if Jake brought home a wonderful woman next time. I hope he finds someone special and builds a lovely family.